Hey guys, tonight we're taking a little detour through time, right into one of the most massive, chaotic and straight up uncomfortable experiences a human being could live through. Welcome to your new reality. You are now a fresh-faced American soldier in World War II, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Not all the way anyway. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love knowing who's out there drifting off while I ramble about cold feet and machine guns. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a letter. Well, technically, it starts with your birthday. You turn 18 and celebrate with cake, a half-hearted smile, and then, like some twisted party favour, you get your draft notice. It's thin, pale yellow, and official looking. It says the US government would like to borrow your body for an indefinite amount of time. You are, of course, completely flattered. Or you would be if you weren't trying to keep your lunch down. Now you could have volunteered. Plenty of guys do. Some are fueled by patriotism, others by boredom, and a few by sheer pressure. Not from the government, but from that internal monologue whispering, "Don't be the guy who didn't go." But whether you volunteered or the draft pulled your name from the hat, the result is the same. You're going to war. Or at least that's the long-term plan. First you're herded, yes, herded, onto a bus with a bunch of other young men. You all pretend not to look scared. Someone makes a dumb joke about getting a free haircut out of the deal. No one laughs, but everyone's grateful someone tried. The bus smells like fear and wet socks. It's not even raining. Next stop, your local induction centre. It's a cold building with flickering lights, and within 30 minutes you're shirtless, holding your arms out like a scarecrow while a grumpy doctor checks your armpits for some reason. You pee in a cup, you recite your birthday like it's a good spell, you take an oath, and just like that, you're government property. Here's your uniform. It itches, the boots don't fit. And that rifle, that'll be your best friend now. Well, sort of. Friends usually don't jam up when you need them most. They assign you to a training camp. It's in the middle of nowhere, of course. Muddy too. Your bunkmate snores like a freight train and your sergeant yells like he invented anger. His voice is gravelly, and he seems to know exactly how dumb you are at all times. You will spend the next few months under his ever-watchful eye, learning how to shoot, march, and not cry in public. Mostly, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Back home, your mum writes you a letter every other day. They always smell faintly of vanilla and worry. Your little brother draws you a stick figure comic where you defeat Hitler using only a baseball bat. He even gives you a cape. You try not to cry when you read it, but it's hard. You haven't slept much lately. You realise something odd. You miss boring things like cereal, or the squeaky sound your bedroom door makes when you open it too fast. You miss your neighbour's dog that always barked at nothing. Out here, everything is sharp and loud or exhausting. Often all three. You meet guys from all over. Brooklyn, Nebraska, some tiny town in Alabama that sounds made up. One guy plays the harmonica at night, which is nice until he tries to play jazz. Then it's a war crime, and yet a weird rhythm forms. You wake up, you run, you eat food that could legally be considered a prank, you clean things that are already clean, you shoot at cardboard Nazis in the distance while imagining the real ones. Historical sidebar time. In 1942, the draft pulled in over 10 million American men. That's like filling Yankee Stadium 150 times over. Just picture that many people trying to use one bathroom, a logistical nightmare. But there were odd little footnotes too. Some guys tried to fake insanity to get out of service. One claimed he was allergic to bullets, didn't work. Another insisted he couldn't go to war because his pet squirrel would die of loneliness. There's no official record of what happened to the squirrel. Now here's a bit that still gets debated. How much did these young soldiers really know about what they were heading into? Sure, the newsreels showed explosions and flags, but the full brutality? The mud, the frostbite, the friends who disappear behind a tree and don't come back? Some historians argue that the government sugar-coated things to maintain morale. Others say the soldiers simply couldn't imagine it until it happened. Either way, you can't say you fully understand what's coming. Your body starts to change, your muscles tighten, your hands steady. You don't flinch at gunfire anymore, not because you're brave, but because your brain has started tuning it out. It's all becoming normal, or something like it. And then, without warning, your sergeant announces you're shipping out. That's it. No grand speech, no dramatic music, just pack your gear, kiss the ground goodbye. There's a silence that follows. not a respectful one. A stunned one, like someone pressed pause on reality. That night, everyone tries to act casual. Poker games, canteen coffee, one guy makes shadow puppets on the wall and gets more laughs than he probably deserves. But the truth hums under everything. This is the last night on American soil. The last time things will be mostly okay. You fall asleep to the sound of zippers, coughing, and the guy below you whispering something that might be a prayer. You don't pray, not usually, but you whisper something too, just in case. And with that, the wheels of history start turning faster. You're no longer training. You're preparing to disappear into something colossal and violent and completely out of your control. But hey, it's not like you're scared or anything, right? You wake up to darkness and the smell of canvas. Some sergeant yells your name before the sun even considers rising. Your pack is already heavier than you remember, and your boots feel like they were dipped in concrete overnight. There's no ceremony, no breakfast buffet, no sentimental send-off. Just a line of buses, a flurry of barked instructions, and the distant creak of your spine as you hoist everything onto your back. Basic training may have been designed to prepare you for war, but right now it feels more like a bizarre camping trip hosted by someone who hates you personally. You stumble through the fog past other half-awake recruits who look just as confused and underfed as you. Everyone has the same hollow stare, the look of people who've been yelled at so consistently they now flinch at birds. Your training camp is somewhere in the American South, and the air is a mixture of dew, gunpowder, and the faint whisper of mouldy socks. Morning formation happens like always, except now there's a finality to it. The drill sergeant, who might actually have no inside voice, walks the line slowly, looking each of you in the eye. He doesn't say much, which is somehow worse than when he's screaming. Just nods once, as if to say, "You'll either do fine, or you won't." Then it begins, basic training, the military's twisted version of finishing school. Your first real introduction is to mud. Not metaphorical mud, or actual cold, wet, somehow also sticky mud that gets into your boots and your soul. You crawl through it under barbed wire while live rounds snap above your head. That first time you don't move fast enough and someone yells so loud your ears ring. After that you move like your life depends on it. Because of course it does. The food? Oh, you're going to love this. Welcome to the world of army chow. Boiled mystery meat, mashed potatoes that defy the laws of texture, and coffee that doubles as paint thinner. It's not that the food is bad, it's that it's consistent. You'll never once wonder what's for dinner. It's grey. Dinner is grey. Your rifle becomes your best friend. You learn how to clean it blindfolded, how to disassemble and reassemble it while some sergeant screams faster directly into your skull. They make you name it. You call yours Lucille because it sounds old-fashioned and slightly dangerous. Lucille jams once during target practice and you actually feel betrayed. Somewhere between day 12 and day 30 you stop caring how dirty you are. Showers happen sometimes when there's time, which there never is. You sweat so much your uniform fuses with your skin and your boots develop a personality. You wonder if you'll ever feel fully dry again. Historical fact break. Basic training camps were scattered all across the country. Places like Camp Roberts in California, Fort Benning in Georgia, and Camp Wheeler, which one soldier described as 95% dust, 5% mosquitoes. The training was intense, often rushed, and designed less to turn you into a soldier, and more to break you down and rebuild you into someone who follows orders, no matter how absurd. You practice marching for hours, straight lines, right turns, perfect posture. They say it's about discipline, but it really feels like someone lost a bet with geometry. You also learn to identify enemy tanks, build foxholes, and how to properly wear a gas mask, which makes you feel like a sweaty insect. During one drill, you get gassed with tear gas. That's when you learn your sinuses can evacuate at max speed. There's always one guy in your unit who takes it all way too seriously. He polishes his boots twice a day and calls the rifle she. You don't dislike him exactly, but you do secretly hope he trips on a route during a march just once. There's another guy who keeps writing love letters to his high school girlfriend and reading her replies out loud. You never asked to hear her poetry, but here we are. At night in the barracks, you lie awake and listen to everyone pretending to sleep. Someone's always coughing. One guy talks in his sleep about pancakes. Another cries, soft, barely there sobs that no one mentions in the morning. It's an unspoken rule. Night is for being human, day is for being uniform. Then comes the obstacle course. You climb walls, crawl under netting, swing over pits, and run with a pack that feels like it's filled with bricks. Your thighs scream, your hands bleed, your sergeant claps slowly when you collapse at the end, and you're not sure if it's sarcastic or sincere. Probably both. One evening, after a particularly miserable round of forced marches, you're ordered to write a letter home. Not if you want, you will write a letter. It's part of morale training. You sit at a mess hall table, pencil in hand, and stare at the paper until the words appear. You lie and say you're doing great. You don't mention the blisters or how you nearly passed out on the rifle range. You do mention the harmonica guy because he somehow managed to smuggle in a second one after the first got accidentally stepped on. Quirky fact intermission. One trainee at Fort Bragg wrote home claiming he'd been attacked by a ghost in the barracks. Turns out it was just a fellow private sleepwalking in full gear. Still, the legend lived on. Ghost of Barracks C became a running joke. By the end of basic, you've lost weight, lost sleep, and possibly lost touch with reality. But you've also gained something strange. A new version of yourself. One who can dig a trench in the dark, hit a target at 300 yards, and sleep sitting upright with a bayonet across your lap. Now, here's a little debate among historians. Was basic training too fast? Some say the crash course approach sent underprepared men into combat, and the army knew it. Others argue that war doesn't wait, and even 6 weeks of brutal preparation was better than nothing. Either way, you're about to find out if it worked. Your name is called again. Orders are barked. You're moving to a staging camp. Next stop, a transport ship. A real one. A floating metal city groaning with young men and bad stew. The real war still feels far away, like a movie you accidentally walked into. But it's coming. Fastest. You sit on your bunk that night, flipping your dog tags between your fingers, trying not to think about what they're really for. The guy across from you hums a tune from home. Your boots sit at the edge of your cot, caked in dried mud and something that might have been your dinner. You're not ready. But then again, whoever is, the air tastes like rusted steel and regret. You're on a ship now, a real one. Not some training barge or floating bathtub. It's grey, massive, and somehow both too crowded and too empty at the same time. You'd think a journey across the Atlantic Ocean would feel exciting. Historic, even. Instead, it feels like a never-ending stomachache. Boarding the transport ship is a blur. 1 minute you're lining up with your gear, and the next you're being funneled up a gangplank like cattle in uniform. The deck is slick with sea spray, and a sergeant with a voice like gravel on toast barks orders you can't hear over the drone of engines and nervous conversation. Everyone's pretending not to be seasick. Bad news, most of you are failing. Inside, it's chaos. Bunks are stacked 3 high, 4 deep, jammed into rooms that were clearly not designed for human comfort. You toss your gear onto the top bunk, where you'll sleep beneath a pipe that occasionally drips something suspiciously warm. Welcome to your new home. For days, maybe weeks, no one will give a straight answer. As the ship pulls away from the dock, you feel your stomach drop. Not from fear, not exactly, but from the way the world suddenly shifts. You're leaving America behind. For good? Probably not. Hopefully not, but maybe. You grip the rail and watch the coastline shrink into a pale smear on the horizon. The sky is too big, and the ocean feels like it might swallow the ship whole just out of boredom. Meals on the ship are served in a cramped mess deck that smells like a high school locker room doused in soup. The food is somehow even worse than back at camp. Lukewarm beans, watery mashed potatoes, and something that might be fish. Or might be the idea of fish. It doesn't matter. You choke it down because it's that or pass out during drills. Yes, there are drills. On a ship. Lifeboat practice is especially terrifying. You're handed a cork-filled life vest, told where to report in case of a torpedo hit, and instructed to stay calm if the ship sinks. Easy enough, right? Sure. Except that after the 3rd day you hear someone mutter, "These things don't float worth a damn." He might be joking. He might not. And that brings us to the real fun, the U-boat threat. Yep, the Germans have submarines patrolling the Atlantic like sharks with torpedoes, and your ship, along with dozens of others in the convoy, is a very large, very slow target. Every now and then an alarm blares. Everyone goes silent. Someone says, "It's just a drill." Another guy says, "Sure it is." One night around 2 a.m, the alarm isn't a drill. The ship jolts. A low, grinding sound rumbles up through the hull like the ocean itself just cleared its throat. You shoot out of your bunk and nearly fall onto the guy below you. Everyone starts moving, half-dressed, wide-eyed, holding helmets and life vests like they're sacred relics. You scramble topside with the others, expecting fire, expecting water, expecting to see pieces of the ship raining down around you. But there's nothing, just darkness. The stars above are brutal and sharp, and the sea below looks like ink. You're not sinking, not yet. Turns out another ship in the convoy got hit. Not yours. This time. The next morning, they announced that a supply ship was torpedoed and lost. No one says how many didn't make it. No one asks. You sit on the deck beside your new best friend, Lucille the rifle, and wonder if that'll be you tomorrow night. You wonder if anyone back home would even know. Historical fact break. German U-boats were a constant menace during World War II. Convoy routes were carefully planned, zigzagging across the ocean to avoid detection. But even then, many ships were sunk, and thousands of soldiers never even made it to the battlefield. Just imagine being packed onto a boat with a few thousand other people and knowing full well that any minute, without warning, you might be swallowed by the sea. Great for the nerves. On day 9, or maybe 10, you've lost count, the weather turns. Rain lashes the deck. Wind howls through the metal corridors. You think you hear someone crying, but it might be the pipes, or you. You're not sure anymore. Seasickness reaches a new level. One poor guy throws up in his helmet. He will never live it down. You try to write a letter, but the paper is damp, and your hand shakes too much. You end up doodling a cartoon of the ship sinking with the caption, "Wish you were here." It's not funny, but your bunkmate laughs so hard he snorts. That's something. Quirky side note. Soldiers on transport ships used to come up with nicknames for their vessels. Yours is now affectionately called the Iron Coffin. There's even a theme song someone made up. It's terrible. You sing it anyway, loudly, off-key, then finally, land. You spot the coastline of England one morning through a fog so thick it looks like the whole country is hiding. People cheer. You don't. You're too busy gripping the rail, trying not to cry from relief or throw up. Again. Docking is surprisingly fast. You're herded off the ship and into trucks that smell like wet hay and diesel. British soldiers greet you with accents so thick you nod along and pretend to understand. One says, "You lot look like you've seen a ghost." You have. It was named Open Water. Here's the kicker, though. Now that you've arrived in England, you're not fighting. Not yet. First, you're headed to a new kind of training. One that involves more mud, more drills, and more waiting. The worst part, the food hasn't improved. There's a strange quiet in the back of the truck as it rumbles toward your next destination. You're surrounded by the men who've started to look older somehow, even though it's only been a few weeks. The air is damp. The road is narrow. And somewhere out there, across the channel, the real war is waiting. You don't know it yet, but everything you've done up to now, that was the easy part. England greets you with rain. Of course it does. A steady, moody drizzle that seems less like weather, and more like the country itself is trying to quietly wash you away. You sit in the back of the canvas-covered truck, your gear sloshing in puddles at your feet, staring out at green fields dotted with cows who look almost offended by your presence. You want to be excited, this is Europe after all, but all you can think about is how damp your socks are. Again. The convoy rolls into a temporary camp outside a small village that smells like peat smoke and boiled cabbage. The buildings are stone, older than anything you've ever lived in. With ivy climbing up the walls like nature's wallpaper, there are sandbags stacked in awkward places, and barbed wire fencing that feels more decorative than functional. Still, you've made it. England. It's not exactly Buckingham Palace, but it's real, and you're here. Your assigned barracks is a long, drafty hut that looks like it was built from spare parts and good intentions. Inside, there's a potbelly stove that hasn't worked since the last time it snowed in hell, and a row of rickety metal bunks that let out screams every time someone shifts their weight. The mattress is thin, lumpy, and full of secrets. You drop your pack and try not to imagine the bugs that probably consider this home. The British Army doesn't exactly roll out the red carpet for the Americans either. The locals are polite enough, but you can feel the skepticism when they talk to you. They've been at war since '39. You just showed up. You're the enthusiastic new guy at a job where everyone else already knows what they're doing, and they've lost friends doing it. Meals are interesting. The British have a gift for taking perfectly edible ingredients and transforming them into flavourless bricks, stewed meat with names you can't pronounce, vegetables boiled into submission, and tea. So much tea. You ask for coffee once and are handed something that tastes like it lost a bet. You drink it anyway. You do manage to get some time in town though, which is nice. There's a small pub that smells like spilled beer and ancient wood, where British soldiers and American GIs mix like oil and vinegar. There's music, some scratchy big band tune on an old jukebox, and laughter that feels almost real. You dance with a local girl who asks you if all Americans talk like movie stars. You say yes. You both laugh. Then she tells you about her brother, who didn't come back from Dunkirk. That quiets things a bit. Training continues, of course. It always continues. You're marched into endless fields, taught how to navigate by compass, how to read a map, how to tell the difference between this is a cow pasture and this is a minefield. You get it wrong once. No one steps anywhere for 20 minutes. They're preparing you for something. You can feel it in the air. Everything is moving faster now. Briefings, drills, the sudden increase in questions about your blood type. You start training with live ammo again. And one guy accidentally shoots a tree branch. Everyone hits the dirt. Nobody laughs. Historical reality check. Between M42 and M4, hundreds of thousands of American soldiers were stationed across Britain, building up for the invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. Entire towns were overrun with troops, so many that locals started calling them overpaid, oversexed, and over here. Not everyone was thrilled about the American presence, especially when food was scarce and buildings were overcrowded. But still, the Brits tolerated the newcomers, knowing full well they'd be the ones storming the beaches soon. One night there's a blackout drill. You're jolted awake by a whistle, fumble for your boots, and are shoved outside into a world of pitch-black silence. You're supposed to practice what to do during an air raid, but no one really knows where to go or how to breathe properly when it's this dark. Someone stumbles into a tree. Someone else whispers, "If this is war, I want my money back." A few days later, you're introduced to a new kind of training, amphibious landings. They truck you to the coast and throw you into the sea. Not literally, but close enough. You're loaded onto landing crafts that bounce like tin cans in the waves, then ordered to rush ashore like it's Omaha Beach. Except it's not. It's a cold British beach where the only enemy is the wind and your own coordination. You trip. A lot. You're not alone. Your uniform stays wet for days. No one seems to care. Hygiene becomes more of a theory than a practice. You scrub your boots with sand, dry your socks on fence posts, and dream of dry clothes like they're a girl back home you can't quite remember the name of. There's a lot of waiting. Days where nothing happens, then hours where everything does. You read a paperback someone left behind, eat chocolate from a care package that melted, re-solidified, then melted again. Your bunkmate teaches you to play poker, and you lose 3 chocolate bars and a pair of socks before you realise he's definitely cheating. And then there are the rumours. Everyone's heard of a place called Normandy. No one knows exactly what's going to happen, but it's clear something big is coming. There are more trucks arriving, more officers walking around with maps, more whispers about dates and tides and something called Operation Overlord, which sounds like a bad comic book villain. Here's a weird fact for your notebook. Before D-Day, fake tanks and inflatable aircraft were used in southern England to trick German reconnaissance planes into thinking the invasion would hit a different part of France. Some guys were assigned to guard a rubber tank like it was the real deal. No one told them it was fake until weeks later, and then, of course, there's the ongoing debate among the troops. Will this whole thing work? Will the Germans be caught off guard? Are we ready? You hear both sides. Some say the planning is bulletproof. Others say nothing's bulletproof. Not even you. You get your first helmet decal. You're told it's lucky. It isn't. You try to sleep with it balanced on your chest anyway, like that might help. As you lie in your bunk one rainy night, watching the shadows of raindrops streak down the canvas above you, the realization sinks in the waiting will end soon. This chapter of mild discomfort and soggy sandwiches is almost over. Soon it won't be drills or practice or make-believe explosions. Soon it'll be real. And you, whether you're ready or not, will be in the middle of it. You can feel it in the way the air tightens, how people talk faster and sleep less. Something's shifting. It's in the rushed way the officers march through camp with folders tucked under their arms, in the fresh coat of camouflage paint suddenly slapped on your landing gear. And in the way everyone's cigarettes seem to burn down just a little quicker. They don't say the words, not yet, but the whisper of them slides between tents like smoke. D-Day. You hear it at chow, at the latrines, in letters scrawled under the covers by flashlight. D-Day's coming. Have you heard when? Are we the first wave? No one really knows, but everyone has that look now, that wide-eyed, don't-say-it-out-loud look. Your days are packed, not with fighting, but with everything meant to prepare you for fighting. You run beach landing drills until your legs blur into your boots. Load, unload, climb over a wall, crawl under barbed wire, scream into the wind. You practice firing from a crouch, then from a prone position, then blind from a foxhole because apparently war doesn't wait for perfect visibility. The beach training continues. You pile into Higgins boats, those low-slung ugly steel boxes with the big metal flaps that drop down like the world's least reliable garage doors. They're loud, wet, and smell like oil-soaked socks. The Navy guys running them clearly hate everyone, and you're starting to understand why. You ride in circles until you feel like your skeleton is made of seawater. One morning you're woken before dawn, not by bugle or sergeant, but by silence, a tense, unnatural silence. You step outside and see a line of trucks parked at the edge of camp. You're told to pack up. Full gear. No more drills, no return to base, this is it. They take you to a marshalling area, basically a giant fenced-in holdings pen near the coast. It's filled with hundreds, maybe thousands of other soldiers just like you, tired, antsy, covered in a fine layer of nervous sweat and tobacco smoke. You sit on your pack and wait. Wait some more, then wait a little longer. You're told not to leave the perimeter. No visitors, no letters out. It's lockdown, World War II style. Someone pulls out a deck of cards. Someone else sings a song about a girl named Rosie that quickly turns into a joke about rations. The tension is so thick it is practically edible. You can't sleep, you can't sit still, but there's nowhere to go. Then the briefings begin. You're called in, group by group, and herded into a tent where a map is pinned to the wall. It's France, more specifically, a part of it you've never heard of, Normandy. The beaches are codenamed like something out of a board game. Omaha, Utah, Gold Sword, Juneau. You're told you'll be landing at Omaha. Casualties will be high, says the officer in charge, as if he's reading the weather. Some of you won't make it off the beach. You sit there, breathing through your teeth. You knew it would be bad, but hearing it out loud, that makes it real in a way nothing else has. You feel your palms sweat under your gloves. You glance at the guy next to you. He's 20, maybe. Could pass for 17. His helmet's on backward. Historical fact break. The original D-Day was scheduled for June 5th, 1944, but bad weather pushed it to June 6th. That delay, just 24 hours, meant some troops were stuck on ships or locked down for days with nothing to do but wait and stew in the knowledge that they were about to be part of the largest amphibious assault in history. And here's a strange little detail. To preserve secrecy, soldiers were given sealed orders that they weren't allowed to open until they were already at sea. Some tried to guess the destination by watching which way the sun rose and how long the trip took. Most just kept their heads down and hoped. You're issued extra gear, extra ammo, extra socks, extra everything. Some guys complain, others accept it without a word. You write one more letter home, but it won't be sent until after the invasion, if you make it. You keep it vague but honest. Something like, I'm okay, I'm nervous, I miss your cooking, I'll try to come back. You fold it up and slide it into the box. The night before the invasion, you're loaded onto the ship. Again, it's cramped, wet, and full of too many boots and too little air. But this time you know what's waiting. You lie in your bunk, unable to sleep, listening to the ocean scrape against the hull. It sounds like it's whispering secrets. At some point, someone starts singing softly, "We'll meet again." You don't know who it is, but a few others join in. The harmonies are off, but the effort is there. It helps. A little. You're handed seasickness pills, which is ironic considering your stomach hasn't settled since you landed in England. You're also given a meal that's supposedly for strength. It tastes like cardboard dipped in beef fat. You eat it anyway. There's a prayer service on deck. You go, even if you're not religious. It feels necessary. A chaplain says something about courage, about sacrifice, about walking through the valley of the shadow. You don't hear most of it. You're too busy staring at the sea, which looks completely calm, deceptive. And now, the scholarly debate moment. Some historians argue that the psychological preparation for D-Day was just as important as the physical. The endless waiting, the tightly controlled information, the blackout on letters, all of it carefully calculated to keep soldiers from mentally unravelling. Others believe it did the opposite, that the uncertainty only deepened the trauma. Either way, it's clear the waiting was its own kind of war. That night you try to sleep, or pretend to. You lie on your bunk with your helmet as a pillow, your rifle propped beside you, boots unlaced just enough to slip back on in an emergency. You think about home, about the smell of cut grass in the summer, the flicker of lightning bugs. You remember your neighbour's dumb dog that used to chase cars, your mum's laugh. A song on the radio that used to make you roll your eyes but now makes your chest tighten. You stare at the metal ceiling and wonder if this is the last night of your life. And then you close your eyes, because tomorrow it begins. You don't so much wake up as get yanked out of whatever uneasy half-sleep you managed. It's still dark. It will stay dark for a while. There's a low murmur across the ship, footsteps, clanking gear, whispered curses, 1,000 heartbeats accelerating together. Someone coughs, someone else throws up. It starts. This is the night before the invasion, the night before D-Day. They call it 0 hour in the briefings. You call it, please let this be a nightmare, but it's real, and you can taste the reality of it in your dry mouth and sour stomach. You sit up on your bunk, your rifle's already beside you. Lucille, still warm from where your hand was clenched around her most of the night. You move on instinct now. No one's yelling. There's no need. Everyone knows what to do, at least they think they do. You pull on your gear, boots, pack, canteen, helmet. Everything's heavier today. The straps bite harder into your shoulders. The helmet sits lower, like it knows what's coming and doesn't want to look. You check your ammo, then check again. You tighten the laces on your boots until your toes lose feeling. You figure it'll come back, or it won't. Not your biggest concern right now. Breakfast is handed out like some kind of military joke. Cold eggs, congealed sausage, a piece of toast that tastes like cardboard died and got reincarnated. You eat all of it. There's no appetite, but there's also no point in going in on an empty stomach. A few guys try to joke. It lands like bricks. The one-liners die fast. There's no music playing, just the thrum of the ship's engine and the sound of your own heartbeat loud in your ears. Once you're fed and armed, they shuffle you topside into the open air, where the sea stretches black and endless around the ship. You can't see land, but you know it's out there, Normandy. You've seen the maps, memorized the drop zones, studied the blurry recon photos like they were going to whisper secrets. The wind bites. It's sharp, cold and full of salt. The sky is moonless, just low clouds smeared across the heavens like bruises. The ships of the Armada surround you, hundreds of them. Transports, destroyers, landing crafts, every shape and size. Some look like they've already been through hell. Others gleam like fresh paint. And they all carry men just like you. And then come the orders. You move with the rest of your unit to the smaller boats, LCVPs, the Higgins boats. They drop down ropes and gangways, and you climb down slowly, careful not to look into the water below. You've been told not to stare at it. The sea doesn't care if you fall. It won't save you. If you slip, someone else will take your place. The Higgins boat is cold steel and diesel stink. 36 guys crammed into what feels like a soup can with a motor. You sit shoulder to shoulder, gear packed tight against your knees, your rifle wedged across your lap. Water sloshes at your feet. Every jolt sends a spike of panic through your spine. You're seasick within minutes, even if you weren't before. The boat motors away from the ship into open water. The sound is deafening. Somewhere behind you, battleships begin to fire. Huge, deep booms that roll through your chest like thunder under your skin. You don't look back. You grip your rifle and stare ahead into nothing. This is the prelude to the storm. Historical sidebar. In the early morning hours of June the 6th, 1944, over 5,000 ships and 50,000 troops crossed the English Channel in the largest amphibious invasion in human history. The operation, long in planning and longer in execution, would forever be known as D-Day. It was a logistical nightmare and a masterpiece of strategy rolled into one colossal gamble. Back in your boat, the spray hits your face like slaps. Someone's praying. You can't hear the words, but the rhythm is unmistakable. Another guy is mumbling jokes under his breath like he's performing for ghosts. No one tells him to stop. Everyone has their own way of holding the fear back. Then, without warning, someone yells, "Incoming!" Tracer fire lights up the dark like fireworks gone wrong. Red lines zipping across the sky. A shell explodes nearby and sends a wave crashing into your boat. You grip the side and hold on, ears ringing. Salt water in your eyes. A man 3 spots over loses his helmet. It vanishes into the sea. He just stares at the space where it used to be. There's shouting now. Not from the officers, just voices rising in panic. The sergeant screams to stay down, to hold position. You want to obey. Your body has other ideas. You tremble, shake, your teeth chatter from cold or fear, maybe both. And then the boat slows. You've reached the drop point, farther out than planned. The tide's wrong, the water's higher than it should be. That's the first bad sign. The ramp doesn't drop yet. There's a pause, like the boat itself is taking one last breath, and that's when the quirkiest bit of fact hits you. Some landing craft had to be lowered by hand because the ramp mechanism's jammed. On more than one boat, soldiers used rifles to pry them open, just to get out and be shot at faster. That's what you're facing, gear failure in the middle of hell. Finally, your ramp starts to lower. The noise it makes is etched into your brain forever. Steel groaning against steel. The wind rushes in, light, gunfire, screams, everything's sound. It comes at you all at once, sharp, violent, and overwhelming. This isn't a movie. There's no slow motion. There's no inspiring score. There's no moment of heroism. There's just the cold slap of water rushing into the boat. The bullets churning the sea ahead into froth, and the desperate, furious knowledge that the only way forward is through it. You're not even on the beach yet. You step into the water. It's higher than your knees, then your waist. You sink under for a second, stumble, and taste seawater mixed with oil and something else. You regain your footing, keep moving. The sand is still dozens of feet away. Around you, chaos. Someone yells for help. Someone else goes under and doesn't come back up. Your boots feel like anchors. You keep going. There's no thought anymore. No strategy. Just go forward. You grip Lucille and push. Men fall to your left, to your right. Bullets snap past your helmet. You reach the edge of the sand, dive behind a steel obstacle and hug it like a long-lost lover. And the worst part? You haven't even started fighting yet. You hit the sand so hard it knocks the wind out of you. It's coarse and wet, sticky with seawater and something darker. Something metallic that clings to your uniform and gets under your fingernails. You press your body against the beach like it's the only solid thing left in the world. Around you, the surf is a nightmare, waves dragging bodies in and out like laundry on a line, broken rifles tumbling next to helmets with no heads inside. Welcome to Omaha Beach. You don't know how long you lie there. Time's gone blurry. Minutes, seconds. Could be days for all you know. What matters is that you're still breathing. The machine guns are still hammering from the cliffs above. German MG-42s, fast and cruel. The kind that don't just shoot at you but through you. The sound is deafening. A metallic growl that tears the air apart. Bullets ping off the metal tank traps and anti-landing obstacles dotting the beach. You duck lower and try to vanish into the sand. To your left, someone is yelling, but their voice is swallowed by the chaos. You look up, just enough to see the boat you came in on floating sideways now, one end burning. The water is slick with oil and blood bubbling like a soup that should never have been made. A guy near you grabs his helmet, shakes his head like he's just remembered where he is, and starts crawling. You follow. Crawling is your whole world now. Crawl a foot, pause, breathe, don't lift your head. Another foot, more sand in your mouth. Your rifle scrapes along with you, heavy and wet. Lucille's jammed. You know it without even trying. You reach a small rise in the beach and throw yourself behind a chunk of destroyed landing gear. That's your cover now. 3 feet of twisted steel between you and becoming history. Up the beach, smoke is starting to roll in. Not from your side, it's from German mortars slamming into the sand. Someone shouts, "Medic!" but it gets drowned out by an explosion that flings sand into your ears and down your collar. You dig your fingers into the ground and hold on. You wish you could dig your whole body into it. Become sand yourself. Just disappear. Then comes the impossible part. Standing up. Orders start getting shouted. Clearer now that some of the noise has shifted farther inland. You're being told to move, to get off the beach. Forward. Always forward. So you stand, kind of. It's more of a squat scramble fall, but it gets you moving. You run like every footstep is a coin flip. Dodge left. Trip over a body, duck under a chunk of concrete, keep going. The ramparts are still a long way off. The beach narrows the farther you go, pushing everyone into a tight corridor of chaos. Barbed wire runs along the edge like the smile of something cruel. You see a flamethrower team get hit. One of the canisters explodes in a flash of fire and screaming, and you turn your face before the smell hits you. You make it to another crater, this one deep enough to sit in. There are 2 other guys inside. One's shaking uncontrollably. The other is reloading a rifle with the calm of someone who's either incredibly brave or completely numb. You sit beside them, nobody speaks. There was nothing to say. Let's pause for a fact. Omaha Beach was the deadliest of the 5 Allied landing zones. Planners expected resistance, sure, but not the level of slaughter they walked into. Machine gun nests were better protected than expected. Bombing runs missed key bunkers, and many of the tanks meant to support the landing sank before reaching shore. It was supposed to be bad. It turned out worse. But even in this mess, there are the quirks. A unit of bagpipers played during the landings on a different beach. Sword Beach. Not exactly stealthy, but morale boosting. And somewhere down the line, a soldier stormed the beach with a broadsword. No, really. His name was Mad Jack Churchill. Not American, sure, but the fact that someone brought a sword to a machine gun fight somehow makes you feel slightly less insane. Back to your crater. You finally check Lucille. Still jammed. Sand in the chamber. You work on clearing it. Hand trembling so bad you drop the bolt twice. You manage to get it functional just as someone tosses a smoke grenade nearby. The plume rises like a genie from a bottle, giving you the only kind of cover you're going to get. You push forward again, this time under the veil of white smoke. It stings your eyes and tastes like chemicals and panic. But you can move, and that's the only currency that counts. As you reach the shingle, the edge of the beach where sand turns to dirt and rubble, you see the bunkers looming above, set into the cliffs like open mouths. They're spitting bullets, endless and merciless. A group of GIs tries to scale the wire. One gets over, the others don't. You push left toward an embankment where the path narrows between rocks. A sergeant you don't recognise waves you in, and you follow blindly. Inside the embankment is a relative quiet. Not actual sense, but less screaming, fewer bullets. You press against the rock wall, breathing through your mouth and wait for the next order. You realise your hands are bleeding from crawling from your rifle, from everything. You press the wounds against your jacket, try not to look. Here's the scholarly debate. Was Omaha a failure that turned into a miracle? Some say the planners miscalculated, that intelligence was flawed, that it became a slaughterhouse. Others argue that despite the chaos, the men adapted on the ground, improvised, charged, fought their way up through sheer guts and desperation. The truth is probably both. You can't plan for everything, especially not this. You spend what feels like hours pinned to that rock wall, waiting for the next move. Slowly, groups begin to push inland. You follow. Not because you're brave, but because staying behind means being alone, and being alone is worse. You duck through gaps in the hedgehogs, dodge mortars, and eventually reach the base of a hill. A steep climb waits. You start up it, your boots slipping in the mud, your legs screaming in protest. You go anyway, because if you stop, you'll die. Because forward is the only direction left, and because behind you is a beach that already smells like ghosts. You make it over the rise, gasping, each breath soaring in and out like your lungs are wrapped in barbed wire. The moment your boots find somewhat solid ground, your knees threaten to buckle, but you force them forward. Else, you're inland now, barely. Not enough to feel safe, not enough to breathe easy, but you've crossed the beach, you're alive, which at this point is weirdly starting to feel like some kind of mistake. The terrain shifts as you move inland. Gone is the open, flat death trap of Omaha. Now you're facing the bocage, the infamous Norman hedgerows. At first glance, they seem innocent. Green walls, pretty, almost, lush with vines and dappled sunlight if you squint past the smoke. But get closer, and you realise they're dense, ancient, and deceptive. These aren't bushes, they're earthen fortresses, 6-10 feet high, lined with stone and roots thick enough to stop a tank. And the Germans are dug in behind them, waiting. You and your unit stumble into a sunken path between two hedgerows. The dirt here is damp and uneven, and your boots slip every third step. There's a silence overhead that feels both welcome and sinister. No gunfire. For the moment, just the creak of gear, the quiet swish of boots through grass, and the steady drip-drip of last night's rain still sliding off leaves. The stillness makes your neck itch. You don't trust it. No one does. Your sergeant, a guy named Breen, with a square jaw and a voice like someone's been sanding it for years, gives the signal to halt. You kneel in the mud, your knees sinking instantly, and wait. He leans close and whispers, "Sniper in the hedges. Keep low. Eyes sharp." As if you weren't already glued to the dirt like your life depended on it, which it does, then comes the crack. High and sharp like a stick snapping, only a lot faster and with more consequence. The guy 2 steps behind you drops, no scream, just a soft exhale and the dull thud of a helmet hitting earth. You freeze, heart spiking. Your brain scrambles to figure out if you're next. Everyone hits the ground, Lucille's back in your hands before you realise you've moved. The thing about snipers is you never see them, not until it's too late. You scan the hedgerows, rifle raised, trying to spot movement, A glint of glass, anything. But the hedges are thick, full of holes and shadows and bad intentions. Someone tosses a smoke grenade. The mist curls up, cloaking your vision. You crawl forward through muck, rifle at the ready, heart pounding a full drum solo in your chest. Eventually, the sniper's position is flushed out, taken down by another squad flanking from the side. You find out hours later that the shooter was just a teenager, barely 16, hidden in a tree, high on adrenaline and probably fear. You try not to think about it too hard. Everyone tries not to think too hard. About anything. Now the advance slows. Inch by inch, foot by foot, you're pushing through hedgerow country, where every twist in the road could be a trap. You move in squads, leapfrogging from cover to cover. The Germans are masters of defence. Each hedgerow becomes a fortress, rigged with tripwires and machine guns and hidden foxholes. You don't fight in long, cinematic battles. You fight in bursts. 10 seconds of horror, then silence, then 10 more. Historical side note. The blockage wasn't just inconvenient. It was a nightmare for Allied forces. American planners had no idea how much of Normandy was covered in this terrain. Tanks got stuck, artillery had limited sightlines, and communication became nearly impossible. The US Army eventually had to invent improvised hedgerow cutters, metal prongs welded to the fronts of Sherman tanks, to literally plough through the walls. They called them rhino tanks. You won't see one for weeks. Right now, you're the plough. As you slog through the brush, you start to lose your sense of direction. The hedgerows twist and curve unpredictably, cutting off visibility and muffling sound. You rely on instinct and the guy in front of you. Hope he knows where he's going. Hope the next step doesn't land you in a minefield. You start counting your steps just to keep your brain from melting. 1, 2, 3, 3, B, bang. You drop, not hit, just startled. False alarm. Someone tripped over a root and accidentally fired their rifle. Nobody yells, nobody even scolds him. You just wait for your pulse to slow. Eventually you're ordered to take a farmstead believed to be held by a small German unit. Small, they say, like that helps. The building is low and squat, stone walls and shuttered windows half covered in ivy. You approach from the north, using the hedgerows for cover. The plan is simple, flank, breach, clear, easy on paper. Total chaos in practice. You and 2 others circle around back, you kick the door in and enter fast, rifles up. The room is empty, except for a radio, still crackling in German. Someone was here. Probably still is. Upstairs you hear footsteps. You freeze, so does your breath. What happens next is short and ugly. A brief firefight. 2 Germans down, 1 wounded and crying in a corner. You shout for him to drop his weapon. He does. He's younger than you, barely more than a kid. Blonde, terrified, bleeding from a leg wound. You and the others stare at him like you're trying to figure out if he's even real. Then someone calls for a medic and the moment passes. You move on. You search the house. Empty rooms, half-eaten rations, a broken picture frame with a photo of a family. Presumably his. You pocket it without thinking. Later. You'll wonder why. Maybe to remind yourself that even the enemy has people. Homes, mums who bake cakes onto Mondays, kids who laugh at stupid jokes. Here's a weird fact that sticks with you. Some German soldiers carried postcards from home with them into battle. Not letters, postcards, like they were on vacation and expected to be back soon. There's something unbearably human about that, and you don't know what to do with it. By nightfall, you're still in the farmstead. You dig a foxhole just outside, with your boots scraping the rocks, hands blistered and sore. You'll sleep here tonight, if you sleep at all. Your hole is just deep enough to sit in. You lean back against the earth and stare at the sky. The stars are out. You hate how beautiful they are. You clean Lucille again. It's becoming a ritual. There's a comfort in it. In the clicks and snaps of moving metal, in the control you have over this one small thing. You eat part of a ration bar, chocolate maybe. It tastes like sand. You chew anyway. Around you, other soldiers murmur. Soft, tired voices. You can't hear what they're saying, but you know the tone. Disbelief. Shock. The dazed conversation of people realizing just how far from home they really are, and how close death is every single minute. The night settles heavy over you. The air is damp. Your uniform is soaked with sweat and dew and dirt. Your mind buzzes with images you can't shake. The boy in the tree, the blood in the hedgerow, the photo frame in your pocket. And still, somehow, you're expected to wake up tomorrow and do it again. Because the war hasn't stopped. It's only just begun. You wake to the sound of a shovel, not an alarm, not a whistle, just that soft rhythmic scraping of metal against earth. It takes a moment to remember where you are. A cold foxhole outside a half-destroyed farmhouse in Normandy, your helmet still crooked on your head, your mouth dry as paper. Someone nearby is digging deeper, maybe trying to make their hole just a little more survivable. You get it. You thought the same thing last night when a shell hit maybe 50 yards away and made your ribs rattle. The morning smells like dew and gunpowder. The hedgerows are still there, tall and green, glistening with the tiny droplets what make them almost beautiful if you didn't know they were also great places to die. You shift your weight, muscles protesting, your back sore from a night curled like a question mark. You don't remember falling asleep. You don't remember dreaming. Just blackness. Then light. Your squad forms up not long after. Everyone looks thinner, dirtier, like someone pressed them into carbon paper and left them in the rain. Helmets hang low over red-rimmed eyes. Faces are streaked with sweat and camouflage paint that's now just grime. You hear someone mutter something about going home, but no one replies. What's the point? Then the mail arrives. Yeah, in the middle of all this, a mail truck actually makes it to your unit. Some poor guy climbs out wearing a helmet way too big for his head and holding a sack of letters like they're sacred scrolls. You crowd around, names are called, hands shoot up. You get one. Just one. It's from your sister. She drew a cartoon on the envelope, something dumb and cheerful. Inside, her handwriting loops across the page like she had all the time in the world. She talks about school, about your mum trying to fix the leaky sink, about the neighbour's new dog who won't stop barking at the garden hose. There's a stick of gum folded inside. It smells faintly of apples. You stare at the paper until the words blur. You read it again, then fold it and tuck it into your breast pocket like armour. That letter is more real than the war. You move out by noon. The mission today? Advance to a crossroads town a few miles south. Saint something. You've already forgotten the name. It's just another cluster of buildings on a map, another place that needs clearing, which usually means walking in head first and hoping the walls don't shoot back. You walk in formation, rifles at the ready, past broken fences and abandoned carts. Normandy farms blur together after a while, stone houses with the sagging roofs, chickens that somehow survived, laundry lines fluttering with clothes that will never be worn again. A dog barks in the distance. You can't tell if it's real or just a memory playing tricks. You pass the wreck of a tank. American. Still smoking slightly. No bodies, thankfully, but the hatch is open. You all look at it, then look away. The tank looks like it was chewed up and spat out. Someone comments on how fast a Sherman can turn into scrap. No one laughs. About an hour into the march, you pass through another hedgerow-lined path, and that's when the machine gun opens up. It happens fast. 1 second you're walking. The next, the world is a buzzsaw of bullets. You hit the ground, face first in mud. Lucille's already in your hands, safety off, barrel scanning the hedge line. You crawl behind a tree stump. You shout out, "Are you okay? Is anyone hit?" You get a few replies. One scream, then nothing. Your sergeant orders a flank. You and 2 others slip through the hedgerow to the left, crawling like bugs. The branches scratch at your helmet, your hands, your face. You reach a spot with a clear shot. You see them, 2 Germans, dug in behind sandbags. You take a breath. Fire. The first shot misses. The second doesn't. It's over quickly. You don't know who fired the killing shot, doesn't matter. You clear the position, check the bodies, take ammo. One of the Germans has a photograph in his pocket. A baby, maybe a year old. You don't take this one. You just leave it there. By late afternoon you reach the town. It's small, half-ruined, with buildings leaning like drunks and windows shattered out like broken teeth. Civilians peek from behind curtains. An old man waves a white cloth. You sweep through, house to house, calling out in broken French. Most places are empty. A few have scared families in basements. You don't point your gun at them, you try to smile. They don't smile back. There's a church in the centre of town, the bell tower is still intact. You're ordered to climb it, get a view of the roads. You volunteer because your legs feel like moving and your brain doesn't want to sit still. The climb is rough, narrow stairs, some half collapsed. At the top the view is strange, peaceful. Farmland stretching out in every direction. Roads like ribbons, the sun painting everything gold. You can't even hear gunfire from up here. For a second it almost feels like peace. Then the artillery hits. A shell lands on the far edge of town, then another. Then another. You scramble down the stairs, slipping, shouting for cover. You make it outside just as a mortar hits the church roof. The whole thing caves in like someone stepped on it. Dust billows out. You dive behind a wall. The bombardment lasts 5 minutes. Feels like 30. When it ends, you cough dust out of your lungs and stand up to find the church tower is gone. Nothing but stone and smoke. The civilians are screaming. A child is bleeding. You help carry them to the cellar of a bakery. It smells like stale bread and blood. You press a bandage to their arm and say, "It's okay," in a language they don't understand, but you say it anyway. Historical fact break. Mail was a lifeline for soldiers during World War II. Letters from home were prized beyond food, beyond sleep. Morale shot up whenever mail arrived. Sometimes, guys would trade chocolate for an extra letter, just to have something familiar in their hands. Mail was censored, of course, no sensitive information allowed, but the smell of paper, the feel of ink, that was home. There's debate among historians over how much the letters helped versus how much they reminded soldiers of what they'd lost. Some argue they were lifelines. Others say they were emotional landmines, cruel reminders of normal life during anything but normal days. That night you sit in the shell of the town, eating what might be soup. You're not sure. It's hot and doesn't taste like dirt, which qualifies it as gourmet. The town is mostly quiet now. A few kids run barefoot between ruined houses. One of them offers you a flower, just a daisy, wilted. You take it, stick it in your helmet strap. The kid laughs. You wonder if it's the first time you've smiled since the beach. You check your pocket, the letter from your sister is still there. You unfold it again, even though you've read it twice already. The words hit differently now, like an anchor or a lifeline. And just for a moment, brief, fragile, you remember who you were before this, rest and recovery they call it, R&R. As if 2 letters and a couple days in a bombed-out farmhouse are enough to rinse the war out of your pores. But here you are, back in the rear, sipping something warm from a chipped tin cup while a guy with a busted accordion tries to play Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree for the 5th time. It sounds like the accordion is losing an argument with itself. Still, it's the first music you've heard that wasn't followed by gunfire. The town, or what's left of it, is being used as a temporary staging zone. Some of the buildings are still standing, barely. Others lean like they're thinking about sitting down for good. You and a few others from your unit are billeted in what used to be a schoolhouse. You sleep on the floor, curled against your gear, next to a chalkboard that still has equations scrawled across it in fading French. It's weird how war forgets to erase the little stuff. First thing you do is take off your boots. It's a full-body experience. Your socks are stiff, your feet swollen and red, toenails blackening at the edges. You don't even want to look at them. One guy has trench foot. The medic gives him a bottle of something strong and a warning to stay off his feet, which is hilarious because staying off your feet in the army is about as likely as room service. You clean your weapon, again. It's practically muscle memory now. The familiar clicks and slides of Lucille coming apart and going back together are oddly comforting. It's the one relationship in your life that still makes sense. You oil her down, wipe off the dirt, check the barrel like you're looking into your own future. Still good, still ready, better than you are, honestly. You're given time to eat something that didn't come out of a tin. There's stew, made from questionable meat and optimistic vegetables, served in mismatched bowls and eaten at shaky tables. The bread is hard, but warm. You sit across from a corporal from another unit who tells you they took a town yesterday and found it completely empty. No Germans, no civilians. Not even a chicken, just silence. He says it like it scared him more than the firefights. There's a medic station 2 houses down. You go, not because you're bleeding, but because they have bandages, soap and hot water. The line stretches around the block. Inside, it smells like rubbing alcohol and desperation. You strip down behind a sheet, scrub off layers of grime and blood, and try not to flinch when the medic dabs antiseptic on your scrapes. They offer you clean socks. You nearly cry. After that, you write. Because what else is there to do? You find a quiet corner, borrow a pencil, and try to put words onto a blank scrap of paper. You start with, "I'm okay," because that's required. Then you stare at the page for a long time. What do you say, really? Today I watched a man bleed out through his boots. Yesterday I ate stew next to a dead cow. Eventually you land on something between honesty and comfort. It's tough, but we're hanging in. The locals are nice. I miss your cooking. Tell Dad to fix the porch. I'll help when I get home. You fold it, slide it into your jacket, and hope it survives the mail sensors. Quirky little fact, some GIs kept journals during the war, hidden ones, since writing about operations was technically forbidden. A few wrote on the backs of maps, cigarette wrappers, or whatever scrap they could find. One guy carved his whole story into a piece of wood he carried in his pack. When asked why, he just shrugged and said, "Paper runs out, wood sticks around." Later you find a mirror, cracked and smoky, in the ruins of what used to be a barbershop. You look at your face for the first time in days. The guy staring back at you looks older, and not in the good way. There's stubble, a cut on your cheek you don't remember getting, dirt smudged into your skin like permanent shadow. You smile. Nothing changes. Just teeth and exhaustion. Somehow there's a card game in the evening. One of the guys has a deck that's missing the Queen of Hearts, but nobody cares. You play for cigarettes and chocolate rations. You win twice, lose 3 times, and fold a hand just because the guy across from you looks like he needs a win more than you do. Fair's fair, that's war math. A little after dusk, there's laughter in the distance. Real laughter. Not the hollow kind that comes right before someone passes out from stress. You follow the sound and find a small group of guys passing around a bottle of something allegedly French and definitely illegal. They've lit a small fire in a crater, and one guy's telling a story about a German cow that chased his entire platoon across a field. It ends with the cow being named their honorary mascot and, according to him, promoted to corporal. It's stupid. You laugh anyway. You need it. Then, like clockwork, comes the silence. It always creeps in after the laughter. The reminder. The war is still out there, just beyond the glow of the fire, breathing in the dark. Everyone feels it. The shoulders slump. The bottle stops moving. Someone changes the subject. Someone else stands and walks away. You lie down in your spot on the schoolhouse floor. The windows are boarded up, the wind still finds a way in. Your helmet's under your arm, your boots are clean, your feet still ache, and Lucille's tucked nearby. You close your eyes. And it hits you. Rest isn't just about sleep. It's about pretending for a few hours that tomorrow doesn't exist. Miz. That maybe, just maybe, you're done, but you're not. You know it. Everyone knows it. Here's the debate. Does rest actually help, or does it just remind soldiers how tired they really are? Some historians say brief R&R made units more resilient. Others argue it fractured the illusion of endurance, made men realise just how close to breaking they were. You could make a case for either, lying here with sore legs and an aching heart. Outside, a dog barks once, then stops. Farther off, you hear artillery. Just one round, distant like thunder through a tunnel. It's not over. You're just on pause. You're woken by cold air slicing across your cheeks. The fire's long since burned out, and the sky outside the broken window is that pale pre-dawn grey that means something unpleasant is coming. You don't need a clock anymore. Your body just knows. You sit up, bones stiff and knees creaking, and reach for your helmet. It's damp. Everything is damp. Even your breath feels heavier in your lungs. The word comes down fast and quiet. Movement in the Ardennes. Nobody says it out loud, but the tension says it for them. Something's wrong. You were supposed to be heading east toward the Rhine, chasing the Germans as they retreated across France. You were winning, remember? That was the plan. Except now, suddenly, you're being packed into trucks and pointed back toward Belgium. The ride is long, cold and miserable. Canvas sides flap with each gust of winter wind. Snow starts to fall, light at first, then heavy. Your coat barely holds back the chill, and the guy across from you is shivering so hard you can hear his teeth. You all try to stay warm by sharing body heat like a pack of wet dogs. It's not pretty, but it works. The rumours start before you even arrive. A massive German counter-offensive. Tanks, paratroopers, surprise attack. Some guys say the line's been overrun, others insist it's all blown out of proportion. You don't say anything. You just hold on to Lucille, listen to the rattle of the truck wheels, and try not to think too much. You arrive near the front under cover of darkness. Snow covers everything, trees, roads, the tops of ruined buildings. It's quiet in a way that feels too quiet. Your breath fogs in the air as you dismount and fall into formation. You're given rations, fresh socks, miracle of miracles, and orders to dig in. The snow is deeper than it looks. You break through the crust with each step, your boots disappearing past the ankles. You find a spot near a small wooded rise and start digging your foxhole. It takes hours. The ground beneath the snow is frozen solid, like trying to carve a hole into concrete with a spoon. Your shovel snaps in half. You curse loud enough to make someone laugh 3 holes over. Eventually, you settle for a shallow scrape of earth and a few logs stacked like a coffin's outline. Welcome to the Battle of the Bulge. Historical fact break. In December of 1944, Hitler launched a surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest. an attempt to split the Allied forces and retake Antwerp. It caught everyone off guard. Weather-grounded Allied planes, communications collapsed, and American units, many resting or undersupplied, were thrown straight into the freezing chaos. The bulge referred to the massive dent it made in the Allied front line. It would become one of the bloodiest battles of the war for American forces. Back in your little slice of the forest, your world shrinks to the space between the logs and the edge of your helmet. You lie in the snow, rifle across your chest, and marked breath, curling up into nothing, listening for footsteps that might not be yours. The cold is a living thing. It crawls into your gloves, bites at your ears, stiffens your fingers until you can barely reload. You try to keep moving even when standing still. Your first night in the line, you don't sleep. You try, but you can't. Between the frost, the wind, and the constant dread of a German patrol sneaking through the trees, your brain won't allow it. You just lie there, blinking at the stars above, hoping the cold will knock you out before fear does. The next morning brings more snow. It falls in thick sheets, muting everything. You can't hear footsteps now, which is somehow worse. Movement is limited. Your sergeant gives a brief rundown. Hold the line, stay alert, fire on sight. That's it. No grand strategy, no advance, just survival. You look around at the others. Icicles hanging from their helmets, faces drawn and blue. One guy's nose is bleeding from the cold. Another is so still you think he's dead until he shifts to scratch something under his jacket. At some point you receive a resupply drop. Small crates pushed off the back of a jeep. They contain exactly what you didn't ask for. More rations, canned meat, some extra socks, and a single pair of gloves for 15 men. You consider fighting someone for them, you don't, but the thought crosses your mind. In the days that follow, the shelling starts, random, inconsistent, just enough to keep you jumpy. A round hits a tree nearby and shreds it into kindling. You duck, heart hammering, ears ringing. Another hits 100 feet away. No warning, no pattern. You dig deeper, build up the walls of your foxhole with snowpack logs, turn it into a tiny frozen bunker. You and your foxhole buddy, the guy with the wheezy laugh and the cough, share body heat, pass a chocolate bar back and forth, and talk about beaches you've never seen. And then the Germans come, not in tanks, not with banners or bugles, just quiet footsteps in the snow and the crack of rifles. They hit hard, fast, and from all sides. Confusion erupts. Someone screams, "They're in the trees!" And they are. You fire into shadows, into smoke, into shapes that might not even be real. Your fingers are so cold you barely feel the trigger. You reload by instinct. You duck when something snaps past your head and hits the tree behind you with a sickening thud. Your foxhole becomes a coffin with windows. You press your cheek to the log wall and try not to shake. When you finally pop up to return fire, you see two Germans running between trees. You fire. One falls. The other disappears. You sit down hard. You don't breathe for a long time. Quirky sidebar. Some American units during the bulge were so poorly equipped that they wore extra socks on their hands and newspapers under their jackets for warmth. One squad built a makeshift stove out of a helmet, a tin can, and a generous misunderstanding of fire safety. It exulted. No one was hurt, unless you count their pride. Here's a debate that still stirs historians. Did the surprise of the Battle of the Bulge come from German brilliance or from Allied complacency? Some argue Hitler's gamble was bold and reckless. Others say the Allies were just too confident, too spread out, too cold to see it coming. Either way, you didn't see it coming, and now you're in it. After 3 days of almost no sleep, your body begins to shut down. You hallucinate briefly, think you see your mum standing in the woods holding a mug of coffee. You blink, it's just a tree, you laugh, or cry. It's hard to tell the difference now. At night you take shifts, one watches while the other sleeps. You wake your buddy gently, like he's a child. He grunts, wipes his nose, and takes your spot while you curl into yourself and try to find warmth in your own shadow. Snowflakes land on your face and melt slowly, and somehow, despite the cold, the shelling, the ghosts in the trees, you're still alive. But the worst part, you know this is far from over. Your body is still technically functioning, though at this point it's hard to tell if that counts as living. You've been in the line for over a week now, if your sense of time means anything anymore, which it probably doesn't. In the Ardennes, days and nights blend together into a long, freezing blur. You're hungry, you're cold, and somehow even after getting shot at that for the better part of a year, this is the worst part so far. It's not the bullets, It's the slow grind, the wearing down. You've stopped feeling your fingers. That happened sometime around day 4. You still use them, load rounds, tighten straps, scribble half-frozen letters, but it's like watching someone else's hands do it all. You keep checking to see if they're still attached. They are, just barely. The routine is simple. Wake up freezing, eat a meal that tastes like cardboard and regret, take watch, maybe dig the foxhole a little deeper, maybe trade half a cigarette for a dry sock, then more watch, then try to sleep without freezing. Repeat. It's less of a schedule and more of a punishment on loop. You start talking to yourself, not in a crazy way, well, maybe a little, but in that soft, under-the-breath way that fills the silence. Just get through today. You're still here. Don't forget to move your toes. Sometimes you whisper song lyrics. Other times, it's just the alphabet. Anything to keep your mind from folding in on itself. And then there are the noises, the constant little ones that set your nerves on edge. A branch snapping under snow, a cough from 2 foxholes down, the dry click of someone's frozen bolt refusing to chamber. You flinch every time. Not because you're scared anymore, you passed scared days ago. Now it's just reflex, baked into your bones. One night, just after you've swapped off watch, the world explodes. Not literally, but in the dark silence of the woods it feels like it. A flare goes up, blinding white light that turns the whole forest into a ghost story. Then shouting, gunfire, machine guns hammering from the trees. The Germans are trying another push. You're awake and on your feet before you even remember how legs work. You scramble to your foxhole, grab Lucille, and start scanning. The light from the flare fades fast, but now the tracers are dancing, red and green streaks cutting through the dark. A guy to your right is screaming something, but you can't make it out over the gunfire. You see figures, shadows moving between trees, and fire. Twice, maybe 3 times. You don't know if you hit anything. Your sergeant yells to hold the line. You nod, even though he's not looking at you. You press your back to the frozen dirt, heart pounding, waiting for the next shadow to move. The firefight lasts 10 minutes, maybe more. When it ends, the snow is covered in fresh footprints, empty casings, and at least one body that wasn't there before. You step out slowly, scanning the dark, breath fogging in front of you. One of the guys is kneeling next to a fallen German soldier, just staring at him. No words, no expression, just watching like he's waiting for the guy to move again. And now you're back in the foxhole, still shaking but alive. Your foxhole buddy hands you half a chocolate bar. Neither of you says anything. You just chew, stare at the sky, and wait for your nerves to stop buzzing. Historical reality. During the Battle of the Bulge, many American soldiers were undersupplied, underdressed, and surrounded. Entire divisions were cut off without proper winter gear or food. Some were told to hold positions at all costs, and they did. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne famously held out for days against German siege without any real support, earning themselves a permanent place in military legend. Whether they were brave or just out of options is still debated. And now for the quirky detail you didn't ask for. Some GIs figured out how to heat their rations by sticking cans under their helmets and lighting a small fire beneath them. It worked, sort of, until a few too many helmets caught fire. After that, the unofficial rule became, cold food is better than a hot head. In your unit, there's one guy who keeps a journal. You didn't notice until now, but every night, while everyone else is too exhausted to blink, he pulls out a tiny book and scribbles notes. You ask him once what he writes. He says, "In case I forget who I was before this." Then he offers you a pencil stub. You don't take it. You're not ready to remember yet. One morning, while you're checking your boots for frostbite and thinking about hot soup like it's a fantasy novel, a runner arrives with news. Your unit's getting pulled back. Not a full retreat, just a shift. Reinforcements are coming in to relieve your position. You don't believe it until you see them. Fresh-faced guys in newer gear, boots that don't sag, eyes that haven't seen too much yet. You want to feel grateful, you really do, but instead you just feel numb. Packing up your hole takes all of 10 minutes. You don't have much, a few rounds of ammo, a cracked mirror, your last cigarette, and the snow, enough of that packed into your coat, your socks, your skin to last a lifetime. You sling Lucille over your shoulder, climb out of the foxhole and join the slow procession back through the woods. It's not victory, it's just movement, but it feels like the closest thing to salvation you've seen in weeks. Here's where the scholarly debate sneaks in. Some historians say that holding the line during the Bulge was the turning point of the war, the moment when the German army shot its last real shot and lost. Others argue the cost was too high, the suffering too prolonged, and that it was more about survival than strategy. All you know is that if the line had broken, you wouldn't be walking right now. As you leave the forest, you look back one last time. The snow-covered trees, the foxholes dug like graves, the stillness, heavy and strange. You feel like you're leaving a part of yourself behind, buried somewhere between the roots and the frozen soil. And maybe that's true. Maybe parts of you don't make it out of some places. The forest is behind you now, but its weight hasn't left your shoulders. You can still feel the Ardennes clinging to your clothes, wrapped around your bones like smoke. Every time your boots crunch through fresh snow, your brain flinches, half expecting another machine gun burst or a whisper of footsteps that don't belong. But this stretch of road, this wide open sky, it's quieter. Too quiet maybe, but still, it's something close to peace. At least for today. You're part of a reassembled unit now. The old squad is gone, scattered. A couple transferred, a few wounded and sent back, one or two never made it out of the trees. You don't talk about them. Nobody does. The new faces around you all carry that same distant stare, like they've watched the same horror film on loop for too many nights in a row. You nod at each other, share cigarettes, trade rations. Trust comes later, if it comes at all. The road winds through a half-frozen valley, past farmhouses with busted roofs and barns that look like they've been kneeling too long. You're headed toward a regroup point near the Meuse River, but even the officers don't seem entirely sure what comes after that. One whispers something about Germany, about finally crossing the border. No one reacts. Borders don't mean much anymore. Not after the Bulge, not after everything. Midday brings a break. You sit in a field of churned up snow and grass, knees pulled to your chest, sharing a can of something that claims to be meat. A plane drones overhead, American this time. The sound of its engine is almost comforting, like a lullaby, made out of noise and distance. You tilt your head back and watch it until it's a dot. The guy next to you, Rivers, you think his name is, asks if you believe in luck. You shrug. He pulls out a photograph from his jacket. It's of his wife and daughter. The corner is torn and there's a smudge right over the kid's face, but he looks at it like it's a sacred relic. He says it saved his life. He had it in his breast pocket when a bullet came through his coat. He shows you the hole in the photo, says it stopped the round. You nod like you believe him. Maybe you do. A few hours later, you're back on your feet, marching again. The cold's worse now, somehow sharper, like it's learned your weak spots. Stings your knuckles, chews on your ears, settles deep into your back where no amount of layers can stop it. You flex your fingers constantly, trying to keep them alive. You're starting to wonder what part of you will still be working by the end of this. And then, out of nowhere, you see him. It's earlier through evening. The sun's low, painting everything with that sickly golden light that makes even broken things look beautiful. You're passing through the remains of a small village, just a couple buildings standing, a signpost snapped in half, a water pump frozen solid. That's when you spot the helmet. It's about 10 yards off the road, half buried in the snow beside a collapsed wall. At first you think it's just another piece of gear someone left behind, but then you see the body. You walk over slowly, your boots crunching softly. He's lying face down, one arm stretched out, fingers curled around nothing. The uniform's American, and the helmet, dented, scuffed, the paint half gone, you recognize it. You kneel beside him and flip him over gently. It's Thompson. You haven't seen him since Normandy, since the first week after the beach when the unit got split during a night patrol in the hedgerows. You assumed he'd been killed. You told yourself that. It was easier than hoping, and yet here he is. Or was. There's a look on his face, not of fear exactly, more like confusion, like he was caught mid-thought and never got to finish it. You sit there for a minute, staring at a face you haven't seen in months. You remember his voice, how he used to hum when he cleaned his rifle. Always off-key, but weirdly calming. He had a lucky coin, a buffalo nickel he kept tucked in his sock. You glance down. Still there. You could bury him, but there's no time. The column's still moving. You could say something, but nothing fits. You just press your hand to his chest for a moment, a soft farewell, and then stand. You leave the helmet there, tilted just slightly toward the sky. Historical fact check. The aftermath of major battles often left missing soldiers unaccounted for months. Units got split, records were lost, bodies weren't always found until snow thawed or someone stumbled over a forgotten field. Thompson's story, dying quietly in the middle of nowhere, is far more common than Hollywood ever lets on. You catch up with your squad, silent. Someone asks what you were doing. You shake your head. Just needed a minute. They nod. That's enough. That night you bivouac in the ruins of a barn. The roof's half caved in, but the hay is dry, and the wind doesn't cut as sharp inside. You pull your blanket tight, lie back on the wooden slats, and stare up at the stars poking through the holes in the roof. For some reason, you think of that kid from your hometown, the one who tried to enlist 3 times before he turned 17. You wonder if he made it overseas. You wonder if he's still in one piece. One of the guys starts telling a story about the first time he ever drove a car. Crashed it into a fence, apparently. Everyone laughs, but the sound is brittle. You fake a chuckle, mostly out of politeness. Your hands drift to your pocket. The letter from your sister is still there, folded, fraying at the edges. You haven't reread it in a few days. You pull it out anyway. Familiar words, familiar handwriting. You read it with your thumb rubbing that one word over and over. Home. Quirky tidbit. Some soldiers were buried with letters still in their pockets. When units recovered bodies, the letters were sometimes sent back to families. Weather-stained. Blood-marked, but cherished. One letter reportedly had the line, "If you're reading this, I probably didn't duck fast enough." Morbid humour was a survival skill. There's no alarm tonight. No flare, no enemy patrol. Just the low murmur of tired voices and the rustle of straw. You fall asleep with your boots on, your helmet half off, and Lucille tucked against your side, and in your sleep you dream about a dinner table. Candles, laughter. Your mum setting down a plate of something hot, steam curling upward. Your sister asking if you remembered to bring her something from Europe. Your father pretending not to smile. You wake up hours later and the barn is still cold. But for a moment, it wasn't. You wake to bird song, which feels like a mistake. It's soft, almost fragile, rising in the cold morning air like the world forgot, just for a second, that it's at war. You lie there, half covered in hay and frost, listening to the tiny melody echo off the broken rafters of the barn. For a brief, disorienting moment, you think you're back home. Maybe on the farm, maybe just waking up early for school. Then your back twitches from sleeping on frozen wood, and Lucille digs into your ribs, and it all comes crashing back. You sit up slowly, careful not to jostle your legs. They've been stiff for days, and you're not entirely sure both of them are still yours. Around you, the other guys are starting to stir, shuffling blankets and stifling coughs, groaning like old men. One of them's already smoking, his helmet tilted forward like a cap. He offers you a drag. You take it. The taste is harsh but warm. It lights your lungs just enough to feel alive. Orders arrive shortly after. You're moving again, a push east through more countryside, more broken towns. You pack quickly, used to this rhythm by now, gear, rifle, boots, march. You don't even think about it anymore. It's like muscle memory, except it's everything. Even breathing is something your body's taken over for you. The road this time is oddly beautiful. The snow's thinning, the trees are taller, and for a while you forget how much the war has ruined your ability to enjoy scenery. You walk past a row of apple trees, bare skeletal branches stretching against the sky, and spot a farmhouse with smoke curling from the chimney. It's the first sign of life you've seen in a while that doesn't come with a gun. As your unit approaches, a few French civilians step out. They're cautious, but not hostile. A woman waves a white cloth, half a tablecloth, really, and holds the hand of a small child in a green coat. Your lieutenant speaks French, or at least enough of it to make the introductions. She tells you the town was under German control just 2 days ago. They left in a hurry. No fight. Just packed up and disappeared into the woods. The woman invites you in. You hesitate, of course. You've seen the traps before. The empty houses with booby-trapped stoves, grenades under floorboards, wires tied to doorknobs. But the lieutenant gives the nod. A few of you step inside, cautious, rifles still in hand. The smell hits first. Bread. Actual bread. Not ration loaf or hardtack, but real fresh bread, baked in an oven that isn't attached to a steel can. The room is warm. That alone feels like a miracle. You take off your gloves, you sit at the kitchen table. The woman pours something hot into mismatched mugs. Coffee? Not exactly. Something darker, earthier. You drink it anyway. She gives you bread, slices of soft cheese, a few apples from a hidden store. It's not much, but you chew slowly, like each bite is a religious experience. It kind of is. Her son, can't be older than 6, sits on a stool across from you and stares. You smile at him. He doesn't smile back, just looks at your helmet, then your rifle, then the mud on your boots, like he's studying a very strange animal that wandered into the kitchen. You finish the meal and thank her as best you can. Merci, she nods, presses her hand to her heart, says, Bon courage, good luck. You nod back and it feels like the closest thing to a blessing you've had in months. Outside, the sun has climbed higher, cutting through the last of the mist. As you continue on, your stomach full and your fingers warm for the first time in weeks, you hear it. The scream, not human, mechanical. Piercing. It cuts the air like a razor. Then comes the explosion, massive, ear-shattering, full of fire and steel. A mine. Someone up ahead stepped on one. Everything erupts. You hit the dirt by instinct, pressing your body flat against the cold ground. Shouts fly, medics sprint forward. You raise your head just enough to see a figure on the ground. His leg's gone. Just gone. Torn away like someone erased it. He's screaming, raw and animal. His friend kneels beside him, pressing a bandage into what's left of a thigh. You crawl toward cover, heart slamming. Your breath catches in your throat. Another blast. Closer this time. The Germans didn't just leave, they left gifts. Historical truth bomb. Landmines were one of the cheapest, most horrifyingly effective tools of the war. As German forces retreated across Europe, they planted thousands of them. No pattern, no logic, just randomness and malice. Even years after the war ended, French farmers were still losing limbs to mines buried in forgotten fields. Your squad's pinned down now, unable to move. Every step forward might be your last. So you wait. Engineers are called up. They start sweeping, slowly, carefully, with long rods and handheld detectors that whine softly with each pass. You sit in a ditch, chewing the inside of your cheek raw, watching as they prod the earth like surgeons operating blind. It takes hours to clear the road. They find 6 more mines. 2 were set to tripwire. 1 was hidden under a chicken carcass. There's debate about this kind of warfare. Some historians say mines are tactically brilliant, perfect for slowing down advancing armies and causing maximum disruption. Others call it coward's work, indiscriminate, cruel, a weapon that keeps killing long after the war is over. After today, you lean toward the second camp. When the road is finally marked safe, your unit presses on, quieter now, eyes constantly scanning the ground. No one says a word. The kid who lost his leg, he's being evacuated. You don't know if he'll make it. You don't even know his name. You think it might have been Miller. The next town is half liberated. A few houses still burn at the edges. You take up position in a church, roof half gone, pews splintered, stained glass shattered across the altar. You sit where the choir used to be, cleaning your rifle, listening to the drip of melted snow through the beams. One of the guys lights a candle in the corner. No one stops him. Quirky detail. In several towns across France and Belgium, priests refused to abandon their churches during the occupation. Some of them survived multiple shellings. One kept giving mass even when the roof was blown off. Said the sky was God's ceiling anyway. You lie back against the stone floor and close your eyes. You don't sleep, not really. Just rest, listen, think, and somewhere in the quiet you feel it. The war hasn't taken you yet, but it's still trying. Germany doesn't look much different from France, at least not at first. Same muddy roads, same battered villages, same tired eyes watching from cracked windows. But when you cross that border, invisible as it is, you feel it. Something heavier in the air, like crossing into someone else's nightmare. You're not chasing the war anymore. You're walking into its house. The Siegfried Line is up ahead. That's the name they give it. The Germans call it the West Wall. Sounds prettier in their language, but don't be fooled. There's nothing but a long chain of bunkers, trenches, anti-tank obstacles, and God knows what else stretched across their western border. The last big line of defence. And you're expected to punch through it like it's a paper bag. The approach is slow. Paranoia creeps in again. Mines, snipers, booby traps. You've seen it all before, but the line promises more of everything. You sleep in shifts. You move in staggered formations. You avoid roads, walk through woods, send scouts ahead like sacrificial lambs. It's routine now. Terrible routine. Death as calendar, appointment. By the time you see the dragon's teeth, you're already exhausted. That's what they call the giant concrete blocks. Jagged, wide-based slabs designed to stop tanks dead. They jut out of the ground like broken molars, rows and rows of them stretching on for miles. Beyond them, bunkers. Grey, hulking things like cement tumours in the earth. You feel small just looking at them. The engineers come first. They check for mines, try to clear a path through the obstacles. You wait in a shallow trench nearby, trying not to think about how exposed you are. You listen to the distant crackle of gunfire, the occasional boom of artillery echoing down from the hills. Somewhere, a German machine gun opens up. You duck even though the bullets are nowhere near you. Reflexes. Eventually, your squad moves out. The path is flagged with red markers, safe zones, or so they claim. You walk single file. Lucille's in your hands, finger off the trigger, but close. Your heart ticks like a watch someone dropped down a flight of stairs. The first bunker you encounter is half buried in a hill, its gun slit dark and silent. You approach slow, careful, grenade first just in case. Then two of you sweep in, empty, still smells like sweat and cordite. A can of sauerkraut sits in the corner, opened and unfinished. Someone left in a hurry. You move deeper into the line, and that's when the shooting starts. Again, this time it's worse, more organised. They know these tunnels, these tracheotomies, and they're ready. A machine gun nest opens up from the left flank, cutting the air like a buzzsaw. You hit the dirt that's frozen and lined with roots that stab into your ribs. Bullets stitch the air above you. You don't even have time to curse. You crawl forward, yelling to your team, trying to flank. It's chaos. Smoke, gunfire, shouting, the sharp metallic zing of ricochets hitting too close. Someone lobs a grenade. It bounces once, rolls into the bunker, and boom! Just like that, silence. Not full silence, but enough to breathe again. You check your squad, 2 wounded. One guy took shrapnel to the leg. The medic's already working on him, hand steady, face blank. You don't ask if it's bad, you already know. You keep moving. There's no time for grief in real time. Historical note: the Siegfried Line was built in the 1930s, stretching more than 400 miles with 18,000 bunkers, tank traps, and abandoned tunnels. Hitler poured concrete into the land like it was going to save him. It didn't, but it sure made things ugly for anyone trying to cross it. As you breach another section of the wall, a shot rings out from above. Sniper. You see the puff of smoke before you hear the whiz. A guy behind you drops. Everyone freezes. Then you scatter, diving behind rubble, hedgehogs, anything. You spot him, high in the trees, nestled in a hunting blind like he's been there for days. You raise Lucille. Steady breath. One shot, miss. Second shot, he disappears. You don't know if you hit him, you hope so. But hope doesn't carry much weight out here. There's a bunker at the top of the hill, fortified, reinforced, and still very much occupied. You're ordered to take it. Because of course you are. The approach is brutal, uphill, under fire, across frozen ground. You toss smoke grenades for cover. They bloom in pink and grey plumes, swirling around like ghost fog. You dash from crater to crater, bullets snapping past. You can feel the heat of them, or maybe that's just adrenaline. At the door, you slap a charge and duck. The explosion shatters the entrance, and you go in fast, Lucille raised. The inside is dim, close, filled with dust and shouting in 2 languages. You fire, once, twice, silence. 3 Germans, 2 down, one throws his weapon down, hands raised. He's maybe 17, blonde, skinny, scared out of his mind. You don't kill him. You could, you don't. You tie his hands with a belt and leave him outside with a guard, and you don't know what happens to him after that. Probably sent to a camp, probably forgotten. There's a moment, brief, where the line feels like it's cracking. You sit behind the bunker, back against cold stone, breathing hard. The snow starts falling again. Some soft, slow flakes drifting down like they've never even heard of war. You let one land on your glove and watch it melt. It feels wrong, peaceful. Your thoughts drift. To the first guy you saw die, to the last letter you wrote, to the pack of gum your sister sent you that you still haven't opened. Almost smile. Almost. Quirky moment from the real war. Some bunkers had signs inside, hand-painted slogans left by the Germans. One said, "Hier lebt der Tod," here lives death. A little on the nose, sure, but hard to argue with. Here's the scholarly back and forth. Was the Siegfried Line tactically necessary, or just Hitler's concrete vanity project? Some argue it delayed the Allies long enough to shift troop movements. Others say it was a waste, more fortress than function. But when you're in the middle of it, so dodging bullets and pulling buddies from tunnels, the academic debates feel very far away. Night falls. You stay in the bunker you took, reinforced now with sandbags and sharp eyes. The wind howls outside, rattling the twisted steel above. Someone finds a lantern. You light it. It flickers, throwing shadows that make the bunker seem alive. You eat in saunts, cold rations, dry bread, no warmth. but you're alive. The wall didn't stop you, but it didn't let you through easy either. Cologne doesn't smell like you expect it to. Maybe that's a dumb thought, thinking a city should smell a certain way, but there it is. You imagine something sweet, clean, perfumed, like the bottle your grandfather kept on his dresser back home. Instead, Cologne hits you like a brick wall of rot and ash and exhaust. The kind of smell that clings to your nose hairs and settles deep in your throat so you are coughing before you even step off the truck. The city is rubble. Bombed out, burned out, hollowed. Buildings look like teeth broken off at the gum line. Streets are choked with debris, tram rails curled like ribbon candy, windows shattered and stitched with bullet holes. You pass what used to be an apartment block, now just a 4-story skeleton with one side wide open, bed still made in rooms with no walls. A little girl's bicycle lies upside down in the street, one wheel spinning in the breeze like it never got the memo. And then, towering over everything, is the Cologne Cathedral. Somehow, impossibly, it's still standing. Blackened, cracked, though chunks missing, but upright. The twin spires rise out of the ruin, like defiant fists. You don't say anything, none of you do, but the sight of it, holding its ground while the rest of the city collapsed, puts a lump in your throat you pretend not to notice. You're not here to fight, at least not yet. You're here to hold. The city was only just taken, after weeks of heavy shelling and house-to-house combat, and now it needs guarding, clearing, securing. That's your job. Sweep through the streets, clear buildings, find stragglers. Keep the civilians calm, the snipers off the rooftops, and the kids from wandering into live mines disguised as toys. You're posted in a building that used to be a police station. It smells like mould, gunpowder, and something older, like the walls remember what they used to be. You and 5 others take over a floor that still has some intact windows. There's even a desk you can sit on. If you don't mind the dried blood crusted to the edge, your first patrol is nothing special, just walking the streets with your helmet low and Lucille at your side, eyes scanning every corner, every alley. You nod at civilians as they pass, mostly women and old men. Some glare, others pretend not to see you. A few kids flash nervous smiles. One tries to hand you a crumpled drawing. You take it, tuck it into your jacket. You don't know what it's supposed to be. Maybe a house, maybe a tank, maybe both. Later you find a German soldier hiding in a cellar. He's alone, hands up before you even speak. Looks barely older than a high school senior. You call for a translator, but the guy's too scared to talk much. All he says is, no SS, just Wehrmacht, just soldier. You believe him. You still take his weapon and lead him outside. His boots crunch over the glass and ash as he walks beside you, staring straight ahead. You keep Lucille trained on his back, not out of spite, but because that's what the manual says to do. At HQ, they process him. You never find out what happens after. Maybe he's sent to a POW camp. Maybe he vanishes into the mess of forms and faces. He never looks at you again. Here's your historical fact. The Battle of Cologne was one of the last major urban fights before the end of the war. The Allies bombed the city relentlessly, 262 air raids in total. By the time they marched in, 95% of Cologne's city centre was destroyed. Only about 20,000 civilians remained in a city that once held hundreds of thousands. And yet, life stirs. You see a bakery reopen using a salvaged stove and whatever flour the owners can trade for. You watch a group of kids build a snowman in a bomb crater using a helmet for the head and burned sticks for arms. You hear put music one night, an old record spinning inside a building you swore was empty. The song is scratchy, warped, a German jazz number maybe. You sit against the wall and listen. You don't understand the lyrics, but that doesn't matter. The tune still carries something human. That's the part no one prepares you for, not the combat, not the fear, but this weird, liminal moment after the shooting stops. You're not home, you're not fighting, you're somewhere in between. A soldier with a rifle standing in the ruins of someone else's life. You help move bodies one afternoon. Civilians mostly, found under a collapsed wall, some too far gone to identify. You carry them out with gloved hands, laying them side by side under a tarp. One woman still holds a broken teacup. Her fingers are frozen around it like it meant something. Maybe it did. You can't unsee it, any of it. That night you write a letter. You don't send it, you don't even finish it. You just write until the pencil breaks, then fold the paper and tuck it into your bag. It's not for anyone, just something to fill the space in your head that's starting to echo. Here's something strange. You find a dog, a German shepherd, half-starved, wandering near the cathedral. You call to it. It doesn't run, just limps over and sits beside you like you've known each other for years. You name it Lucky. You feed it scraps from your rations. Lucky sleeps beside your bedroll, breath warm against your shoulder. Someone says pets aren't allowed. You don't care. Lucky stays. Quirky fact from the front, some units unofficially adopted stray animals during the war. Dogs, cats, even goats. One tank crew reportedly kept a duck in their vehicle. They said it was good luck. It probably wasn't. But hey, it gave them something to believe in. Now here's the scholarly question. Were soldiers like you better or worse off once the fighting paused? Some say the silence gave room for reflection, for mental wounds to start healing. Others argue it made things worse. No distraction, just memories. You're not sure which is true. All you know is that every time things get quiet, your hands start to shake. Eventually the orders change again. You'll be moving east, deeper into Germany, closer to whatever's left of the Reich. The war's not over yet, they remind you. Just turning a corner. You pack your things slowly. Eyes lingering on the room you've called home for the last week. The cracked walls, the smell of coffee still lingering from yesterday. Lucky watches you, tail thumping once. You sling your pack over your shoulder, check Lucille, and take one last look out the window. The cathedral still stands, it always does. And so somehow do you. You don't expect to take prisoners. That's not how it's supposed to go. You've been trained to shoot, not negotiate. To clear rooms, not hold conversations with the enemy. But here you are, east of Cologne now, marching through the remains of a farming village that barely exists anymore, and someone is yelling, "Nicht schießen! Nicht schießen! Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" before you even round the corner. He steps out with his hands up. No rifle, no helmet, just a faded grey uniform and boots covered in mud. His face is flushed, young, thin. Could be your age, could be younger. You raise Lucille anyway. That's automatic now. You scan the scene. He's alone, standing in the middle of a collapsed road with his fingers stretched high above his head like he's trying to touch God. His eyes are wide, not pleading, not begging, just exhausted. You've seen that look in mirrors. Your squad fans out, rifles ready, no one fires. The lieutenant calls out in broken German, asks if there are others. The man shakes his head fast. "Nur ich! Just me." Then he pulls something from his coat, slowly, cautiously, and tosses it to the ground. His weapon, an old Mauser rifle. He kicks it towards you. You step forward, still aiming, and pat him down. He's shaking. Cold? Fear? Probably both. You find nothing else on him but a photograph folded into a square in his breast pocket. You don't look at it. You hand it to him. He presses it to his chest like a saint's relic. You motion for him to kneel. He does. You tie his hands loosely with a belt, then help him stand again. He nods once, great feel. You don't feel like a hero, you feel like someone who doesn't want to kill someone who looks like a kid trying to borrow bus fare. You lead him to the back of the column. The lieutenant sends him with the others. 2 more prisoners from earlier that day, both silent, both wounded. One limps, one coughs into a rag that's already soaked red. None of them resist. What would be the point? As you move on, you can't stop thinking about the moment when the German stepped out. How easy it would have been to pull the trigger. How trained you are to do just that. It doesn't feel like mercy. It feels like luck. A brief gap in the storm. Later, while securing a large house on the outskirts of a rail junction, your squad finds another soldier. This one doesn't surrender. You're the first one through the door. Lucille raised. The room is empty. Almost. Then movement. A flicker behind the doorframe. A shot rings out and splinters fly past your ear. You hit the ground hard. Your squad returns fire. Quick, deafening bursts. You flank around the side, heart pounding. You toss a grenade through the open door and hit the dirt. The blast rocks the house. You hear someone scream, then nothing. Inside, the soldier is on the floor, hit in the stomach. You rush over. He's clutching a knife now, not a rifle. He looks up at you like he wants to ask a question he knows you can't answer. Blood pools under him. You crouch down. He tries to speak, but it comes out as a gargle. Your hand reaches for the photo in your pocket. You don't know why. You almost offer it to him. But his eyes close before you decide. You sit there longer than you should. After the house is cleared of Perceppo, you step outside into the pale German afternoon. The sun is out for once. No clouds, just light filtering through the smoke drifting from a bombed bridge nearby. You find a spot by a stone wall and sit down. Lucille leans against your leg. You stare at your hands. They're steady. That scares you more than anything. Historical intermission. During the final months of World War II, American units captured hundreds of thousands of German soldiers. Many surrendered willingly, knowing the war was lost. Some fought to the last breath. There's ongoing debate among historians about how these prisoners were treated. Most were processed according to the Geneva Convention, but not all. In the chaos of war, rules sometimes blurred. And here's a strange, grim little fact. American GIs were sometimes more willing to take prisoners if the enemy looked young, scared, or just tired enough. But SS uniforms, those were different. Seeing those black collars often flipped a switch. Not everyone got the option to raise their hands. Later that night, you're on watch. The house you've holed up in has no windows left. You sit by the wall, peering through the gaps, watching for shadows that never come. Your prisoner, the first one from earlier, is sitting nearby, hands still loosely tied. Someone gave him a blanket. He sits quietly, not trying to talk, just staring at his boots. You glance over, and for some reason, maybe because it's late, maybe because you're just tired, you ask his name. Jakob, he says. You nod. You speak English? He hesitates. Little. You shift slightly. You were SS? He shakes his head, quick. Wehrmacht, not SS. Then, almost pleading. I fight. They say fight, I fight. You don't answer. What could you say? Same here. I get it. You don't. Not really. He reaches into his pocket, slowly, and pulls out the folded photo. Shows it to you. A girl, maybe 6, hair in pigtails, standing in front of a tree that's probably not standing anymore. My daughter, he says. You nod. He tucks it away again, then leans back against the wall and closes his eyes. You don't stop him. There's a scholarly argument floating around in post-war studies, the difference between an enemy and a soldier, where that line really is. Is it in the uniform? The orders? The intent? One side argues that every man on the other side is complicit by choice. Another says that in war, choice is a luxury. You don't know which side you land on. You just know that tonight, you're sitting in the same house with the man you were supposed to kill. At some point you hear snoring, soft, exhausted, not from Jakob, from someone else in your squad. You smile barely, then let your head rest against the wall. You don't fall asleep, but you stop trying not to. The war doesn't slow down just because your morals need a breather. You're back on the road within a day, eastbound again, deeper into Germany, marching past scorched farmland and burned-out vehicles still coughing up smoke. You pass a horse cart flipped on its side, its wooden wheels snapped like toothpicks, and a field where the grass is black and brittle, flattened by something heavy and cruel. You haven't seen anything green in weeks. The trees are still standing, but they look like they gave up a while ago. You don't talk much on the march, nobody does. Conversations have dried up into nods and shoulder bumps, the occasional grunt when someone trips or drops their pack. You walk in Hansi, and the silence starts feeling normal, like noise would be a betrayal. It's late afternoon when your unit comes across another group of German soldiers, but this time it's not on patrol or in the chaos of a firefight. You find them sitting in a ditch, 3 of them unarmed, coats open, rifles stacked neatly against a tree a few yards away. They're talking quietly, smoking. One's reading a crumpled newspaper in German, another's got his boots off, massaging his toes with gloved hands. They look more like prisoners waiting to be picked up than soldiers preparing to fight. Your lieutenant steps forward and raises his weapon. Hands up! Jetzt! Hände hoch! They don't argue. They stand slowly, arms raised, hands visible. The one with the newspaper doesn't even look scared, just tired. He says something in German you don't catch, then he nods toward the tree, toward the rifles. Nicht loaded, he says in broken English, not loaded. You approach with your squad, Lucille steady but low. There's no twitchy fingers, no sudden movements. Just 3 men who've clearly already surrendered in their minds. You pat them down, take their gear, check for knives or grenades. Nothing. Their dog tags are worn, their boots are full of holes. One of them has frostbite creeping up his fingers, black around the edges. The medic winces when he sees it. And then comes the moment. It's not dramatic. It's not cinematic. It's a pause. A small one. You stand there with your rifle, looking at 3 prisoners who pose no threat. You're ordered to march them back to the road where an MP truck will pick them up. You start walking with them, keeping your distance, but your thoughts drift somewhere dark. Because while you're walking, the guy next to you, Bates, from Alabama, leans in and says, "Quiet enough so only you hear? Why don't we just shoot him?" You blink, look at him. "What?" He nods toward the Germans. "They're just going to eat up rations we need. Then go home after the war and pretend they were farmers the whole time." You say nothing, just keep walking. Bates shrugs. I'm just saying, he mutters. This moment right here, is the part nobody teaches you about. The part between the firefights, when the line between war and murder gets real thin, and suddenly you're not asking can you kill, but should you? You walk in silence, rifle still in your hands. You don't answer Bates. You don't look at the prisoners. You just think about how easy it would be. Here's where the historical debate kicks in. Allied war crimes in World War II are rarely discussed, but they happened. Sometimes it was rage, sometimes revenge. Other times it was just exhaustion. A cracked moral compass. There are records, whispers in letters, half-remembered stories of GIs executing prisoners when no one was watching. Officially, those weren't sanctioned. Unofficially, it depended on the officer. You get the prisoners to the road, the truck shows up, the MPs load them in, no one dies. Not today. Later, when you're cleaning Lucille in the shell of a train station, Bates comes by and tosses you a ration bar. Doesn't say anything. You take it. Chew slowly. That night, while you're on watch, you can't stop replaying it. Not the firefight, not the marching, just the thought. What if no one had been around? Would you have stopped him? Would you have pulled the trigger? Would you have looked away? You think of Jakob, the German prisoner from days ago, and his quiet "I just fight" defense. And then you think of the ones today, the ones who didn't even try to fight. The ones who looked you in the eye and waited to see if they'd get to live. You're not proud of how long it took you to figure out your answer. Quirky wartime fact, some Allied soldiers collected souvenirs from prisoners. Daggers, insignia, belt buckles, even teeth in a few horrific cases. One soldier carried a silver SS ring back home and wore it as a conversation piece until his wife made him bury it in the yard. A lot of trophies were taken. A lot of lines were crossed. The next morning you talk to the chaplain, not because you're religious, not really, but because he's there. You ask him, what would you have done? He knows exactly what you're talking about. Says nothing for a moment, then just nods. I'd like to think I'd have done the right thing, he says. Then, I'd like to think I still know what that is. You help load wounded onto a truck later that day. A guy with half a foot, another with shrapnel in his neck. One doesn't stop crying. Not from pain, from something else. You don't ask. You end the day in a barn with a caved-in roof. You find a chair that only wobbles a little, sit down and stare out at the night. Stars above, ruins below. The war rolls on, but for now you still get to choose, and tonight you chose not to kill a man. You don't feel heroic, you just feel tired. The gates creak as they open, heavy and rusted, the kind of sound that makes your skin tighten. You don't know where you are at first. The name on the sign above the entrance is long and jagged, written in black lettering that seems like it was carved more than painted. You don't speak German, not enough to translate it anyway, but it doesn't matter. The name will become burned into your brain in about 10 minutes, along with everything else you're about to see. Your squad was told it was a labour camp. That's the word used. Arbeiterlager, a place where civilians were processed, where they worked in support of the war. You expected barracks, maybe a few warehouses, maybe some scared civilians in need of food or medicine. That's what the officer said when he handed out the orders. Sweep the area, secure it, report anything out of place. You're not ready for what you find. The smell hits first. It's not a fresh smell. It's old, stale, rotting. It rolls over you the moment you step past the fence. Part smoke, part something else, something sour and sweet at the same time. You've smelled dead bodies before. But this is different. This is what death smells like when it's had time to settle in. The camp is quiet. No guards, no resistance. Just silence, like this place is holding its breath. And then the people appear. Thin doesn't cover it. These aren't just starved, they're skeletal, ghost-like, with faces that barely move and eyes that are somehow too large for their sockets. You see bones under skin that's pulled tight like parchment. Their clothes are striped, oversized, hanging off them like curtains. Some have numbers tattooed on their forearms. You didn't know that was a thing until now. They don't rush you, don't beg, they just stand there staring. Some spit, some cry, some do both at once. Man reaches for your hand and says something you don't understand. You don't need a translator. The look in his eyes says it all. You've arrived too late. You walk through the camp, rifle lowered, boots crunching over gravel and broken glass. The barracks are worse inside, rows of wooden bunks stacked 3 high, but no mattresses. Just planks, people lying there with sunken cheeks, blinking slowly. as if they're not sure you're real. A medic runs past you with a pack in hand. One of your squad mates vomits in the dirt and walks away, shoulders shaking. You keep moving. Behind one of the buildings, you find the pit. It's not a grave, not really, just a hole, shallow, filled with corpses. The bodies are tangled together, nameless, stripped. The pit is still open, fresh. You stare at it too long. Someone pulls you back. There's a building with a chimney that still belches smoke. The smell makes sense now. Someone, your lieutenant, maybe, says it was used for burning bodies. You want to believe they're wrong, that it's just rubble, just destroyed equipment. But then you see the ash, the piles of clothing, the shoes, all sorted. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Children's shoes. You have to sit down. You drop to a crate beside the doorway and feel your body go cold. Someone asks if they can take photos. Not from your unit, some press guys arrived a few hours later, already snapping pictures like they're building a museum. One of them offers you a cigarette. You don't take it. You end up near the fence talking to a woman who can barely stand. She speaks a little English, says her name is Miriam, says she's Polish, says she hasn't seen her brother in over a year. She asks if you've brought food. You dig into your pack and give her a chocolate bars, and she unwraps it like it's gold. Takes the smallest bite you've ever seen. You sit with her for a while, don't say much. She doesn't ask questions, you wouldn't have answers. Historical reality, the liberation of concentration camps by Allied forces, began in Topor and escalated rapidly in 1945. Soldiers who encountered the camps weren't briefed. No one explained what they were about to walk into. Even high-ranking officers were caught off guard. Eisenhower himself ordered that the camps be thoroughly documented so no one could ever deny what they'd found. He called the evidence unimaginable. Scholars still debate whether the average American GI really had no idea what was happening in these camps before they arrived. Some believe there were rumours, hints, whispers passed between locals. Others argue that even if the soldiers had heard stories, nothing could have prepared them for the scale, the machinery of it, the organised cruelty. You find a notebook in one of the barracks, tucked under a plank. It's not full, just a few pages, mostly names, dates. One page just says Mother, 217, gone. You fold it carefully and slip it into your jacket. You'll give it to someone who might know what to do with it. That night, back at your temporary camp just outside the wire, no one eats. The medics work non-stop. You sit with your back against a truck and clean your rifle because your hands won't stop shaking otherwise. Someone lights a fire, but it doesn't help. The cold isn't in your skin anymore. It's somewhere deeper. There's a dog tag near your boot. Someone must have dropped it earlier. You pick it up and read the name. Steinberg J. You don't know who that is. Doesn't matter. You hold it anyway. Quirky note. If the word even fits here. Some GIs tried to cheer up survivors by giving them gum, candy, even cigarettes. But many couldn't eat anything solid. Their stomachs were too damaged from starvation. Giving them too much food could actually kill them. It did in some cases. The liberators didn't know. They just wanted to help. You sit beside Lucky, the shepherd you picked up near Cologne. Even he's quiet tonight. No tail wagging, just curled up at your side, eyes watching the camp beyond the barbed wire. There's no sleep. Not tonight. Not after this. You lie on the ground and stare up at the stars, wondering how light can still shine in a world where this happened. You close your eyes, and the fence never leaves your mind. The Germans surrender on a Wednesday. You think it's a Wednesday anyway. Time's been broken for a while now, split up into meals and patrols and scattered dreams that end in gunfire. But when the word spreads, it's almost anticlimactic. No trumpets, no parades, just a courier on a motorcycle skidding to a stop with a paper in hand, and an officer reading it twice before finally saying, "Well, that's it then?" You blink. That's it? The news rolls through the ranks like wind through tall grass. You hear it from two guys leaning over a map, then again from the medic unwrapping bandages by the truck. They've surrendered. It's over. They signed in rhymes. And the sentence that makes your chest tighten without warning, the war in Europe is over. There are cheers, but they're not the cheers you imagined. Not wild, not loud, they're tired, hollow. Like the sound you make when you stub your toe but have too much pride to cry. Sometimes guys clap each other on the back, someone fires a celebratory shot into the sky and gets chewed out by a sergeant immediately after. The rest of you just sit down wherever you are, on crates, on curbs, on dirt, and let the words sink in. You stare at Lucille. She sits on your lap like she always does, worn and scratched. the wood of the stock polished smooth by your hands. You ran out of oil weeks ago, but you still wipe her down every night. Just a habit now. You don't say anything to her, but you think it. You did your job. We both did. You should feel something bigger. Joy, maybe, relief, triumph. But all you feel is bone-deep exhaustion and a stranger, lingering suspicion. Like any second now someone's going to shout, "Just kidding, sir," and hand you another stack of orders. You've spent so long braced for pain that your muscles refuse to unclench. The next few hours pass in a strange haze. No marching, no shooting, no digging, just waiting. For what? Nobody knows. The officers pace like they've lost their purpose. The cooks serve hot meals for once. Real coffee appears like it's been hiding in a secret drawer until the right moment. You eat slowly, not trusting the taste. You look at every bite like it might be your last piece of real food on earth. That night there's a bonfire. Someone drags a piano from a wrecked schoolhouse. One of the guys knows how to play. He's no virtuoso. But he can stumble through a half-remembered version of Sentimental Journey and I'll Be Seeing You. You sit in the circle, fire flickering against your boots, the smoke stinging your eyes. A few guys sing along, voices low, off-key, perfect. A bottle of something strong gets passed around. You take a swig. It burns all the way down like truth. Lucky curls up at your feet, head resting on your boot, tail giving the occasional lazy wag. You scratch behind his ears and wonder how long you'll be allowed to keep him. Probably not much longer. You find yourself watching the flames, hypnotized by the way they eat the wood. You think about that pit behind the camp, about Miriam and the chocolate bar, about Jacob, the prisoner with the photo of his daughter, about Thompson, face down in the snow, and the man with the teacup frozen in his hand. You think about all the ghosts you've collected. They've been marching with you the whole time. Someone raises a toast. "To the end," they shout. You raise your cup too, but you don't say anything. You're not sure if it is the end. Not for you. Not yet. Historical truth time. Germany surrendered on May 7th in 45, with the official public announcement coming on the 8th, VE Day. Victory in Europe. For many soldiers, it was a surreal moment. Some units were still fighting right up to the hour of surrender. Others only heard days later. Some celebrated. Others just sat in stunned silence. The war was over, but they weren't home. The celebrations weren't universal. In some places, civilians cheered in the streets. In others, nothing happened at all. In a few places, German soldiers threw down their weapons and simply walked into the forest, disappeared, vanished like smoke. Back at camp, you try to sleep. You lie on your back, boots still on, helmet tilted over your eyes. Lucille rests against your shoulder like a tired friend. The fire crackles outside. You hear laughter, but it sounds far away. You close your eyes and try to picture home. You imagine your mother's kitchen, the cracked tile by the sink, the smell of lemon cleaner, your sister playing records too loud in the other room, the old armchair your father refused to throw out, even though it had stuffing poking through the sides. You picture it all like a dream, like a photograph gone soft around the edges, but you can't quite imagine yourself in it. That's the hard part. The war's over, they say, so why can't you feel it? You're not the only one. The next day, 2 guys from your squad start a fistfight over a deck of cards. Another walks off into the woods and doesn't come back for 3 hours. Someone else drinnets until he passes out and wakes up punching the air, thinking he's still in the Ardennes. The officers try to keep things moving. "Don't get sloppy," one warns. "You're not home yet." He's right. The paperwork, the waiting, the processing out is all ahead of you now. More trains, more trucks, another ship. But at least the bullets have stopped. Quirky historical sidebar. Some soldiers didn't believe the war was really over until they got home and heard it from their own radio. A few refused to part with their rifles until they were on American soil. One guy slept with his helmet for 3 weeks after arriving in New Jersey. Said it felt wrong to let go, like the war would come back the moment he did. You get a fresh uniform, clean boots, a shave. It all feels too smooth, too light. You catch yourself walking like you're still dodging sniper fire, keeping your head low, checking corners. You laugh the first time you do it. Then you cry a little, quietly. Before you leave, you visit the camp again. The one with the gate and the smell and the ash that doesn't blow away. You stand by the fence and look inside. The place is being cleaned up, managed by medics, Red Cross workers, translators. Survivors are being transported, names taken, photos catalogued, but you remember what it looked like the first time, and you promise yourself you won't forget. Not ever. You say goodbye to Lucky a few days later. Regulations. He can't come with you. You kneel down, hold his face in your hands, and whisper something dumb. He licks your cheek. You leave him with a Belgian family near the border, the kind that smiles with their eyes and says thank you too many times, and just like that, you move on. War's over, they said. Now you just have to figure out what that means. Occupation duty sounds easy on paper. No bullets, no charges, no orders barked over mortar fire. You're not storming beaches or freezing in foxholes anymore. You're keeping the peace, walking patrols, watching checkpoints, handing out food, filling notebooks with names of people who don't meet your eye. It's supposed to be the wind down, the epilogue, the part of the story where everything softens and fades into the credits, but you quickly learn that just because the guns have stopped doesn't mean the war has. Your unit is stationed in a town near Kassel in the American zone of what's now Allied-occupied Germany. The map calls it liberated, but it doesn't feel like it. The buildings are still broken, the roads are still scorched, and the people aren't cheering. They're watching, quietly, like animals that haven't decided if you're a hunter or a helping hand. You walk through the town square and every eye follows you. Some hate you, some fear you, some just look hollow. You're assigned to a requisitioned school, chalkboards still scrawled with half-erased equations and German vocabulary words. Your bunk is in a second-floor classroom with rows of desks stacked against the walls. You sleep under a map of Europe where someone's drawn arrows in red ink. The New Germany. Doesn't look very new. Your job? Patrol, mostly to deter looters, discourage black market trade and remind the locals that the war might be over, but the Allies are still in charge. You and your squad take turns walking the perimeter of the town, rifles slung low, boots crunching over gravel, and the occasional bit of shattered tile. You nod to farmers. You smile at kids. You exchange awkward hellos with shopkeepers who look at you like you're an occupying force, which technically you are. One afternoon, a man approaches you near the bakery. He's old, stooped, and dressed in clothes that might have been elegant 20 years ago. He introduces himself as a professor, speaks perfect English, and offers you a cup of coffee in his home. You hesitate. You're not supposed to accept hospitality, but the sergeant nods, so you go. His house smells of paper and ink. There are books everywhere, on chairs, under tables stacked against the wall in uneven towers. He talks while he brews, says he taught philosophy, says he was forced out of the university in '39, says things got dark. He doesn't elaborate and you don't ask. He pours you thick, bitter coffee in a cracked porcelain cup and hands you a sugar cube. You let it dissolve on your tongue and it tastes like the first good thing in weeks. The professor leans back and studies you. Do you believe, then, he asks, that a nation can lose its soul? You're not sure how to answer that, so you say nothing. Just sip the coffee and look at the dust in the air, catching the afternoon light like snow. That's the thing about occupation. Everything is quieter, but it's not simpler. You're not being shot at, but now you have to think again. To look people in the eye and figure out what they were doing 6 months ago. To wonder which baker or teacher or postman was wearing an armband before the surrender. Some are honest, some aren't. Most won't say. Historical sidebar. During the occupation, American forces were tasked with denazification, rooting out former Nazis from civil positions and trying to rebuild German society from the ashes. It was a murky, imperfect process. Many who were guilty denied everything. Some who were innocent got caught up in guilt by association. The Allies had to decide who could stay, who had to go, and how to tell the difference in a country that had spent 12 years under a regime that blurred all the lines. One day, you're assigned to escort a former officer to a detention facility. He's not SS, at least not anymore, just Wehrmacht. Like so many others, middle-aged, clean-shaven, eyes sharp and unsettlingly calm. He doesn't resist. He walks beside you like a businessman late for a train. You ask him if he's guilty of anything. He laughs and says, "Depends on who's writing the history." That sentence sticks with you. On another patrol, you find a young boy stealing from an Allied supply truck. He can't be older than 10. He's got a bag of powdered milk under one arm and a busted can of beans clutched in both hands. When you catch him, he runs. Not out of guilt, out of instinct. You chase him 3 blocks before you corner him near a church. He's terrified, shivering, clearly hungry. You let him keep the food. You tell him to run home and not come back. He looks at you for a long second, like he's trying to decide whether you're lying, then takes off without a word. You don't tell the sergeant, you just go back to walking. Quirky occupation fact, some soldiers developed friendly relationships with German families, swapped chocolate and cigarettes for eggs and clean clothes. A few even fell in love. Weddings between American GIs and German women started popping up not long after the surrender. It wasn't always approved, but it happened. One corporal famously proposed using a Hershey bar wrapped in a note written in broken German. She said yes, you stay in that town for 2 months, long enough to memorise the route from the bakery to the schoolhouse, long enough to recognise faces, long enough to realise that even in peace people are capable of strange cruelties and strange kindnesses. At night, you read. You borrowed a book from the professor, something about justice, something translated from Greek. You don't understand most of it, but you keep reading anyway. It's something to do, something to fill the gap between one kind of war and the next. One night, you're sitting outside the schoolhouse reading By the Last Orange Smudge of Daylight, when a woman walks past with her daughter. The little girl looks at you, smiles and waves. You wave back without thinking. The mother doesn't smile, but she doesn't pull her daughter away either. It's a small thing, but it stays with you. The next morning you receive orders, you're going home, just like that. It doesn't feel real. Trying to go home turns out to be harder than surviving a firefight. Not more dangerous, just more absurd. There's no heroic fanfare, no victory parade lined up as you leave your post in Germany. Just a new stack of papers, a train ticket that smells like mildew, and a sergeant yelling that you've got 30 seconds to pack your gear or you'll miss your slot. You don't really believe it until you're halfway across a frozen train yard and someone slaps you on the back and says, "Guess we're out of here." The train is cold and loud and smells faintly of oil, wet wool, and too many men who haven't bathed in days. You sit by the window, Lucille between your knees, boots braced against a duffel bag stuffed with everything you own, and probably half a dozen things you don't. A guy across the aisle plays with a harmonica but never actually plays it. Just twirls it in his fingers like he can't decide if it's a toy or a grenade. You watch the countryside slide by. Grey towns, bombed churches, forests stripped bare by artillery. Somewhere along the ride you pass another train going the opposite direction. You catch a glimpse of faces in the window. German civilians, mostly women and children, pressed shoulder to shoulder in silence. No one waves. When the train dumps you at a holding depot near Le Havre, it's raining. Of course it is. Everything in France comes with a side of damp. You huddle under a leaky canvas tent with 24 other soldiers, waiting for your name to be called like you're in line at the DMV from hell. They hand you a clipboard, ask the same 5 questions 3 different times, and then send you to a new line where you wait to be told which ship you'll be going home on. Eventually, you end up sleeping on a cot made of plywood and fatigue. The guy next to you snores like a busted engine. Across the tent, someone cries out in their sleep, probably reliving Bastogne or the Bulge or a night in some nameless forest that none of you will ever forget. You don't try to sleep, you just stare at the roof and count the holes. 3 days pass like that. Waiting, eating grey food from tin trays, waiting again. You play poker with matchsticks. You trade stories, but only the funny ones. The ones that don't include blood or screams or faces you can't forget. Everyone's performing just a little. Everyone wants to seem normal again, whatever that means. Finally, your name gets called. You're going home on a Liberty ship called the SSC Robin, which sounds more like a cartoon character than a military vessel, but at this point, you'd ride home on a piece of driftwood if it meant getting back across the Atlantic. You board the ship at night. The docks are lit by harsh overhead lights that make everything look like a film set. You file up the gangplank with your gear, Lucille slung across your back for what might be the last time. The deck smells like diesel, salt and rusted iron. You find your bunk, 4th row down, jammed between a guy with a cough and another who keeps rubbing his temples like he's trying to press something back into his skull. And then, just like that, the ship pulls away. No ceremony, no salute, no "thank you for your service." Just the groan of steel and the churn of ocean as Europe begins to disappear behind you. Historical checkpoint. More than 4 million American soldiers were returned home in the months following Germany's surrender. The operation, nicknamed Magic Carpet, was one of the largest mass transports of troops in history. Soldiers waited in camps across France, Belgium and England for weeks, sometimes months. Ships were repurposed freighters packed with bunks stacked 5 high, men eating in London shifts, and seasickness so brutal that some guys spent the entire journey hugging buckets. You're lucky. The Sea Robin is crowded, sure, but the weather is calm. Mostly. The first few days are quiet. You stay below deck as much as possible. Not because of the motion, though it's enough to make soup an act of bravery, but because looking at the open sea makes you feel too small. Like the war never happened. Like you could vanish into this big blue nowhere and no one would even notice. The guy above you snores. The guy below you hums the same 3 bars of a song over and over. Someone steals your socks. You don't bother replacing them. You just rotate the one good pair like a survivalist. You get used to the stink. You get used to the quiet. You get used to the gnawing feeling that something isn't finished. One night you find yourself on the deck alone. The sky is massive, cloudless, stars so bright they feel fake. You grip the railing and stare out at the water. There's no horizon, just black and more black. You think about Miriam in the camp, Jakob Schent and his photograph. The kid you let steal food, Thompson in the snow, Lucky, left behind with a family you barely knew. You think about all of them, and you don't know what you're supposed to do with it all. And then, just as you start to wonder if any of this is real, you hear it. Someone humming below deck. Don't sit under the apple tree. Off-key, familiar, and for some reason, it makes your chest ache. Quirky voyage trivia. One Liberty ship on the return trip had a stowaway dog that became the crew's unofficial mascot. They never turned it in. GIs weren't allowed to bring pets, but somehow dozens managed to sneak them aboard. Cats in duffel bags, puppies tucked into coats. One private even smuggled a goat back to Boston, claiming it was emotional support livestock. Nobody questioned it. As the ship nears the US coast, everything changes. The air smells different. Cleaner. Warmer, even if it's not. Someone spots land first and yells. Everyone scrambles up to the deck, pushing, jostling, practically crawling over each other to get a glimpse. And there it is, the skyline, faint at first, then sharp, real. America. Guys are crying, laughing, clapping each other on the back. One guy kisses the deck and says, "Never doubting hot dogs again." You just stand there, frozen, hands clenched on the railing, staring at the land you left what feels like a lifetime ago. You should feel relief. You should feel safe. Instead, you feel like you left something behind, and you're not sure who you're bringing home with you. Back in America, everything is too bright, too clean, too fast. The dock in New Jersey is swarming with brass bands and banners, and some woman in red lipstick is singing Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, like she thinks it's still 1942. You disembark in a haze, blinking against the sun and the smiles, wondering if anyone here actually knows what it was like. Someone hands you a donut and a cup of coffee before your boots even touch pavement. You thank them, but the words come out wrong, slurred, like your mouth isn't used to peacetime yet. You expect someone to meet you, maybe your sister or that friend who promised to write and never did. But there's no one. You're just another face in a sea of duffel bags and duffel-eyed men, shuffling past waving flags and small children holding signs that say, "Welcome home, hero." You think the signs are meant for someone else? They process you through a tent city with army precision and DMV speed. Paperwork, uniform returns, one final medical check where a doctor glances at you for all of 10 seconds before signing off. "You look good," he says, like your ghost isn't still rattling around behind your ribs. Then comes a short debrief where someone with too many stripes on his shoulder tells you, "Thank you for your service, soldier. Now go enjoy your life," like it's that easy. You catch a train home, second-class ticket, crowded car, some guy across from you asleep with his mouth open and his cap sliding off his head. You stare out the window and try to spot something familiar, but it all feels strange. You recognise the shapes, telephone poles, red barns, water towers, but they might as well be props on a movie set. When did everything get so American? A woman sits next to you halfway through the trip. She's wearing a blue dress with tiny white polka dots and smells like soap. She asks if you were in the war. You nod. She asks, "Did you see any fighting?" You say yes. She nods back like that means something. Then she says, "Well, I'm just glad it's all over now." You don't reply, because for you it isn't. You arrive in your hometown around sunset. The station hasn't changed. Same cracked platform, same overhead bell that never rings on time. A kid is selling newspapers and chewing gum on the corner. He can't be more than 12, but he's wearing his father's fedora like it gives him authority. You walk through the neighbourhood slowly, duffel bags slung over your shoulder, watching the houses light up one by one as families settle in for dinner or the evening news. You see curtains move, people peek out, a few wave. One old woman steps out of her front door and claps her hands together. "You're back," she says. You nod. She disappears inside like she just needed to confirm it. Your house looks the same. Porch swing, chipped paint, garden hose coiled like a snake. The door creaks when you push it open. Your sister's in the kitchen frying something. She drops the spatula when she sees you, doesn't say anything, just runs over and hugs you so hard it hurts. You eat intestinal that night. Mashed potatoes, overcooked peas, something resembling meatloaf. She talks about the neighbours, about gas prices, about rationing ending, about the movie theatre reopening. You nod when appropriate. Try to smile, but your head is full of other things, things she can't see. Later you lie on your old bed staring at the ceiling. The mattress is too soft. You keep waking up thinking you're back in a bunker or under a truck or somewhere outside Cologne. Every creak of the house sounds like a shell. You reach for Lucille in the dark and remember she's not there anymore. Historical note, reintegration wasn't exactly a science in 45. There were no therapists waiting at the docks, no structured programs, no diagnosis for what would later be called PTSD. Most returning soldiers were expected to slide right back into civilian life like it was a pair of broken-in boots. Some did, others didn't. Many just didn't talk about it at all. You try to find a job. No one tells you that your experience storming the beaches doesn't qualify you to run a cash register. You get turned down at the hardware store, the feed mill and the local paper. One guy tells you to come back when your head's on straight. You don't know what that means. You thought it was. You walk around town with your hands in your pockets, nodding at old friends who look at you like you're wearing a mask of your own face. One of them, Mike, you think, asks you to come get a beer. You go. You sit at the bar. He asks what the war was like. You stare into your glass and say, "It was long." He laughs like you've just told the world's driest joke. You never go back to that bar. There's a parade one weekend, veterans on floats, kids waving flags. A marching band plays Anchors Away for the 10th time that afternoon. You're expected to ride in a car with a banner that says, "Welcome home, boys." You do it. You smile. You wave. A little girl hands you a paper star. Then you go home, take off your good shirt and sit in the bathtub for an hour without turning on the water. Quirky post-war detail. In one Midwestern town, a grocer gave every returning soldier a free pie. Cherry mostly. No one knew why. He just said, "They've earned it." Years later, veterans still talked about it. Not the pie, but the fact that someone had thought of something small, something kind. You start writing again, letters to no one. Bits of memory you can't tell your sister or your old friends, or the guy at the post office who keeps asking if you bagged a kraut. You write about the camp, about Jakob, about Lucky. You write it all down and put it in a shoebox in the back of the closet. You don't know why. Maybe just so you don't forget. One morning you wake up early, the sun is coming through the curtains in long strips. You lie there and realise you didn't dream about the war for the first time in weeks. That's something. That's not nothing. You get up, stretch and start the day. You're not all the way home yet. But maybe, just maybe, you're getting close. The GI Bill feels like a magic ticket the first time you hear about it. School, paid for, a house maybe, a future, in theory, is printed right there in black and white. Passed around like a promise no one's quite sure how to cash in. But the way your sister talks about it, like you've won the lottery, you start to believe it might actually be real. You sign up for college first, not because you know what you want to do, but because it sounds like the right step. The admissions office looks at your papers, nods like they've seen 1,000 just like you, and hands you a schedule. Just like that, you're a student again, or pretending to be one. You buy your books with a voucher. American history, Intro to Economics, Philosophy. You crack one open that night at the kitchen table and get through 3 paragraphs before your brain starts buzzing and your stomach flips like you're back on the ship. You close the book. Try again the next day. Classes start and you find yourself surrounded by kids. 18s, 19, fresh faces, clean slates. They talk about swing music and ball games and professors like they're obstacles instead of people. You're older. Not by much on paper, but in years that count. You feel like a grandfather. You sit in the back, take notes, keep your answers short when called on. You don't talk about the war unless someone asks. And when they do, it's always the same question. Did you see combat? Did you kill anyone? What was it like? You've learned to answer with a shrug and a tight smile. I did what I had to. They don't push after that. One night, in a lecture about European politics, the professor says something about post-war reconstruction. A student raises their hand and says, "We really saved them over there, didn't we?" And you feel something inside you harden. You want to say, saved who? The towns we shelled into ash? The families we left to starve, the prisoners we found too late? But you don't say anything. You just stare at the chalkboard and let the moment pass. Historical backdrop. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, aka the GI Bill, changed everything. Millions of returning soldiers used it to attend college, buy homes, and start businesses. It's one of the reasons the American middle class exploded in the post-war years. But the benefits weren't always handed out fairly. Many black veterans were denied access due to racism baked into local policies and banks. The promise was real, but it wasn't equally distributed. You take a part-time job to keep your hands busy, loading boxes at a hardware store run by a man who shakes your hand too firmly and talks about how he would have signed up, but his knee kept him out. You nod, carry the weight, keep your head down, you get used to the rhythm, class, work, read, repeat. You even start remembering how to sleep again most nights. Not well, not deeply, but enough. One morning you catch yourself laughing, just a little. Someone says something stupid in the student lounge, and before you realise it, you're chuckling. It feels strange in your mouth, like a sound you forgot how to make. You write letters now and then, not to anyone specific, just letters, folded, tucked away, not mailed. You write about the guys from your unit, about the cathedral in Cologne, about the little girl with the paper star at the parade, about the way the frost looked on the ground in Bastogne. You don't know what you'll do with them, but writing them feels like lancing a blister. Painful, but necessary. You meet someone. She's a librarian, smart, kind, and doesn't flinch when you talk about the war, doesn't try to fix you, just listens. You take her to a movie, then another. You hold hands. Eventually you tell her about Lucky, about Miriam and the camp, about Jacob and the photograph of his daughter. She doesn't interrupt. When you finish, she just says, "You're still here. That matters." You don't realise how much you needed to hear that. You save up and buy a car. It's beat up and smells like someone's grandfather used it to store onions, but it runs. You drive out to the edge of town one weekend, park by the river, and watch the water flow past in slow muddy curls. You sit on the hood and think about the war, about the men who didn't come back and the ones who did but didn't survive it anyway. You think about the ones who still don't sleep, who still reach for rifles that aren't there, and you realise, finally, that you made it. Not just home, but through. Quirky post-war tidbit. A lot of GIs struggled with civilian life in ways that don't make it into textbooks. One guy got kicked out of college for starting a foxhole in the middle of the quad when a car backfired. Another mailed himself a piece of shrapnel every year on the anniversary of his injury, just so he wouldn't forget. Healing looked different for everyone. You graduate. A few years later, you buy a house. A little one. With a porch. You hang a photo on the wall, your squad all crammed together, smiling like idiots in front of a half-destroyed church. You can't remember who took the picture, but it's the only one where everyone's alive. Sometimes, you wake up before dawn and make coffee just to hear the sound of something familiar. You sit in the kitchen, mug warm in your hands, and watch the sun rise in slow slices through the window. The world is quiet now. Not peaceful, but quiet. You still don't like loud noises, still can't eat canned peaches, still flinch when someone walks up behind you too fast. But you're alive. You're doing the best you can with the rest of your days, and some days that's more than enough. And now you're older. You don't remember when exactly it happened. That quiet slide from young veteran to old timer. But it's here. Your hair's gone mostly grey, your back has opinions about stairs, and there's a drawer in your kitchen full of pill bottles lined up like soldiers in formation. You still wake early. Not because you have to anymore, but because you always did. The habit stuck. Your house has a porch swing that groans when you sit in it, and some mornings you do just that. Coffee in hand, robe wrapped tight, watching the world stretch itself awake. There's a bird feeder in the yard. Some days squirrels climb into it like they own the place. You don't shoo them away. They remind you that some things always find a way to survive. The neighbourhood's changed. Families move in, move out, kids skateboard down the sidewalks and blast music you don't understand. One of them calls you sir, like you're a general. You smile and wave anyway. Better sir than grandpa, you figure. Once a year, your town holds a ceremony. They set up folding chairs at the park, play the national anthem on crackly speakers, and have someone read off a list of names. You're always invited. Sometimes you go, sometimes you don't. Depends on the weather, depends on your knees, depends on whether you feel like putting on the jacket that still sort of fits. When you do go, it's the same. People nod at you with that mix of gratitude and discomfort. like they're not sure how to talk to someone who's lived through the pages of their history book. A few shake your hand. One little boy, eyes wide and serious, once asked, "Did you fight the bad guys?" You said, "I did what I had to." Same answer, still true, historical context. By the 70s, World War II veterans were regarded with a kind of reverence not afforded to later generations. The war had clear enemies, clear victories. It made for clean headlines and easier stories to tell at dinner tables. But for the veterans who lived it, the neatness was never the point. They knew it had been messy, ugly, complicated, full of moments that didn't fit inside a documentary. You still keep a box in the back of the closet. Old letters, ration books, your service tags, one of your boots. You don't know why you only kept one. The other was probably lost somewhere between Belgium and the memory you've tried not to revisit for 50 years. You find yourself going through the box sometimes, not out of nostalgia, but to remind yourself that you didn't imagine any of it. Lucille's gone. You turned her in when you left the service, just like they told you to, but sometimes your shoulder still aches like she's slung there waiting for you to raise her one more time. You think about Lucky. Wonder if he lived a long life chasing rabbits and licking children's hands. You like to believe he did. You like to believe the family you left him with smiled every time he trotted into the room. Maybe he forgot you, maybe he didn't. Doesn't matter. He was safe. That's what counts. You think about the camp less often than you used to, but it still shows up sometimes, uninvited, like a shadow sliding across your coffee cup at breakfast. You remember the smell, the faces, the pile of shoes. Sometimes you can still hear Miriam's voice in your head, soft and cracked, asking if you brought food. You remember the taste of that chocolate bar, bitter, heavy. The memory doesn't sting anymore. It just sits with you, like an old friend who never quite moved out. You've read books, seen movies, watched the documentaries. Some of them get it right, most don't. They skip the boredom, the smells, the letters you never sent because you didn't know how to say "I'm still alive, but I don't know what that means anymore." You talk about it now sometimes, to your daughter, your grandson, a neighbour who asks politely but sincerely. You don't glamorize it, don't exaggerate, just the facts, softened by time, rough edges worn down by repetition. You tell the truth where you can, you leave out what they're not ready to hear. Sometimes they ask, "Did it change you?" You laugh. Everything changes you. One summer evening you're at the park watching a Little League game. The sun's low, the air smells like popcorn and cut grass. You're sitting on a folding chair, plastic cup of lemonade in hand, when a kid, maybe 10, maybe 12, comes up and says, "My teacher said you were in the war." You nod. He asks, "Did you win?" You pause, then say, "We survived. That's what matters." He tilts his head, like he's not sure that's the same thing. Maybe it isn't, but it's the truth. Quirky veteran trivia. Some World War II vets wrote poetry later in life. Others became radio hosts. One opened a bakery and named every cake after a battle he fought in. Another refused to sleep indoors again, setting up a tent in his backyard and living there until he passed. Peace, it turns out, is something you define on your own terms. Now, on the days when the past feels heavier than usual, you sit in that creaking porch swing and let the wind rock you gently. You listen to the trees, you sip your coffee, you nod at the world like you're telling it. "I'm still here. I'm still trying." You made it through Normandy, the hedgerows, the bulge, the road to Cologne, the camp, the boat home. You made it through the long, quiet war that followed, the one in your head. You did what you had to. And when it mattered most, you chose mercy. You chose to see the humanity in a face wearing the wrong uniform. You chose to keep living, even when it would have been easier to stop. So, did you survive? Yes, not just in body, but in spirit. You carried the weight, and somehow it didn't crush you. And now you get to watch the sun rise one more time. That's your reward. That's your peace. That's your answer. So here we are. You've made it to the end, or at least to this quiet place after the noise has died down. No more boots in the mud. No more distant artillery thudding in your chest like a second heartbeat. Just you, breathing steadily in a body that somehow kept going, one foot after the other, all the way home. It's strange, isn't it? How a war you never asked for becomes something you carry long after the last bullet flies. How the uniform becomes a second skin, even after you've hung it in a closet and tried to forget how it smelled after weeks in the field. And how home, this place you dreamed about every night in the foxholes and the transport trucks and the cold European mornings, Doesn't quite feel the same when you return. The mailboxes are still there. The pie still tastes sweet. But you're different. Quietly, permanently different. But even so, you survived. You got through the draft notice, through basic training, through the ship ride over and the beaches of Normandy. You slogged through the hedgerows, the freezing forests, the minefields, and the firefights. You held the line when the snow wouldn't stop falling and when the enemy came in waves. You watched friends fall. You spared a life or two. You carried memories no one else will ever see. You made it through the victory, the waiting, the boat ride home, and that strange alien feeling of peace. And after all that, you didn't just exist. You lived. You sat on porches, fell in love, read books under open skies, made pancakes on slow Sunday mornings. You raised eyebrows at loud music and tried not to yell when the dog barked during a thunderstorm. You didn't get everything right, but you stayed. And staying, it turns out, was the bravest thing you ever did. Maybe you're still carrying something, a sound, a smell, a face, a decision. That's okay, that's part of the deal. Some parts of the war don't end, bud. They just learn how to live quietly in the corners of your soul. Let them stay. They've earned it. And now it's time to rest because your war's over. You survived, and you don't have to carry it all tonight. Let it go, just a little. Breathe slower, let the quiet settle in. There's no more waiting for orders, no more looking over your shoulder, just the soft hum of the fan, maybe the creak of a house as it settles, the whisper of distant wind in the trees outside. You're safe, you're home, and tomorrow will still be here waiting patiently. For now, close your eyes and drift.